Call this meeting of the Planning Commission to order and establish first that we have a quorum. We have 6 of 7 members present. So the first order of business is chair and vice chair elections. We're going to nominate and vote for the 2024 chairperson and vice chairperson. So first item is chairperson. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion for Travis, for you to remain as chair.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second for me to remain as chairman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So 6-0. All right, next item is vice chairperson election. Would anyone like to make a motion on that one?
Make a motion to re-elect Luke.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to keep Mr. Urick as vice chair. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 6-0. All right, consent agenda. The commission may request for a consent agenda item to be moved to the regular agenda for presentation and public comment. Otherwise, the consent agenda will be considered in one vote. All items on the consent agenda have been recommended for approval by staff with no opposition received to date. Since some of the items on the consent agenda may require a public hearing, the commission will accept a public comment on any item on the consent agenda in one hearing. I'm going to start by removing item A from the consent agenda. The minutes were not in the packet that we received, so we're going to table that or continue it to next month's meeting. Anyone else like to pull items or make a motion?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda items B and C.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. Oh, excuse me, before I do that, I'm going to open it up for public comment. Would anyone wish to speak on items B or C on the consent agenda? It's the final plat of the Roosevelt Loft subdivision and a replat in Lakeview Town Center. All right, I'm going to close public comment and now take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So 6-0. And then item A, could I get a motion to continue that for next month?
So move.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to continue item A to next month's meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 6-0. All right, subdivision plats. The Planning Commission has final authority for approval. Appeals may be directed to the City Council. Item 1, FP 2341, a request of final plat, The Palms, Section 4, located in the Single Family District, RS1, with a variance request from Chapter 103A2, a paving width variance for Hillside Drive, and a variance request from Chapter 93A1 from direct and abutting to a public right-of-way. Mr. Vanoy.
Good morning, Planning Commission. Aaron Vanoy, Assistant Director of Planning and Development Services, presenting this case for final plat 23-41, The Palms, Section 4. It is one lot that's being final platted here. It is 0.72 acres in the RS1 Single Family District. It's one lot north of this lot right there, and so it's just in this area right here. And you can see, and I'll clear those off, you can see Hillside Drive that arcs around and goes off the paper, and you can see their access drive, which is actually larger, or wider, I should say, than Hillside Drive. So with the preliminary plat that was presented back in 2013, this lot was laid out then. It did not have the direct and abutting at that time, and it did have this access easement, and so at that time, Planning Commission accepted that preliminary plat, and therefore the two variances that come along with this really are just variances to move forward with the approval. This is in SMD 1, Mr. Tommy Hebert out in the Lake Nasworthy area. So here again is that plat, and you can see the one lot there, lot number 11. You see the access drive that does the 90-degree turn back to the left. They also have an easement that goes off to what I'm going to call the north, and then you see where Hillside Drive is at the very bottom. So the first variance, the direct and butting to public right-of-way, it does not quite touch Hillside Drive, but there is an access easement that allows this lot to go and touch. And that, again, that preliminary plat set this lot layout in 2013. It's not really something we can come back and say we need to change that at the time, or at the time today. The paving width on Hillside Drive is a variance that we possibly could change today. However, topographically, it's very challenging. That is on the hillside, and there is some significant incline issues as far as you're coming up to that, and there's really not a lot of space to expand paving, particularly for this just one small lot in this area. The access road does function much better as they have just one point of egress to come up to Hillside Drive, connect to Hillside Drive, and then come around back to Knickerbocker. With that, the staff is recommending approval of the Palm Section 4 and approval of the two variance requests for the paving width on Hillside Drive and the direct and abutting access to the public right-of-way with the following three conditions of a tax certificate, install necessary utility service connections, and add a fire hydrant where necessary if it becomes necessary. With that, I'll answer any questions.
Aaron, do you mind going back to the survey? Yes. You talked about an easement that
Yes.
allows access to the right-of-way, to the public street.
Yes, so right here is Hillside Drive.
Yes, sir.
Here is the access easement that they currently have constructed that goes back to the lots to the south. And then future lots that may come around to the side actually will have an access easement there as well.
Okay. Are those easements recorded?
Yes, those are recorded through the preliminary plat, and they are established at this time.
Perfect. All right. Anyone else have questions for the staff? All right, we're going to open it up for public comment.
Good morning, Russell with SKG Engineering. Would ask for your approval with the conditions as presented and would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Russell?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gully. Anyone else wish to speak on this case? All right, I'm going to close public comment and take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 6-0. All right, item 2, FP 2338, request to final plat Baker Ranch, Section 6, located in the low-rise multifamily RM1 and the single-family RS1 in the 4,000 block of Ruth Lane and the 5,000 and 6,000 blocks of Vista del Sol Drive.
Good morning again. This is the final plat of Baker Ranch, Section 6. This is just kind of an overhead without the image on. It was a little clearer this way. So this is a final plat of 11.8 acres. There is some RM1 low-rise multifamily and RS1 single-family residential. The intent of the developer is actually RS1, and as y'all know, RM1 allows a multitude of types of structure types, and they are planning to do single-family residential in that area. This is an extension of Ruth Lane to the west and the creation of Vista del Sol Drive that will go to the north and connect to Blair Lane, which is just north of Ruth Lane. This is SMD1 Tommy Hebert, and it's in the neighborhood of Country Club. So this major road here at the bottom, that is Twin Mountain. That's the major road that comes through, but they're coming through and they're doing the rest of Ruth Lane, coming to here, and then coming up with Vistas del Sol that will connect over to Blair Lane. They are doing only the north side lots at this time on Ruth Lane. They're not final platting the south side lots. But their intent is to dedicate the full right-of-way and to pave the full width of Ruth Lane. So there will not be a half road there. That's their full intent. They're doing that just because they want to have that connectivity through there. So I'll move on to the next slide. Let me clear that off. So again, here you see Ruth Lane being extended over. You see that it's got the 50-foot right-of-way, and they will be doing the 40-foot paving. They do have a stub out that goes to the south for later on development, and then Vista del Sol Drive that comes up and connects to Blair Lane. I believe it's right at 33 lots. They are platted out as single-family lots. They're a little bit larger than single-family lots to kind of meet the RM1 zoning, but they do meet that. And that's their intent at this time, is to do an RS1 style housing project. Staff is recommending approval of the Baker Ranch Section 6 with the following, and that should say 6 conditions, apparently. Prior to plat recordation, provide tax certificate, install necessary utility service connections, add fire hydrants as necessary, extend water and sewer, and a drainage study. And the last thing was just a note from the fire marshal's office that once the number of dwellings exceeds the 275, they would have to have another egress. They do have an egress at Baker Ranch Section 4B, 34B, that goes up and across the railroad and back to Southwest currently to satisfy some of those concerns at this time. With that, I'll take any questions.
Do you have a photo of that by chance, Aaron?
Let
Or
me,
is it on that plat? Because that
so
plat
here,
doesn't go
if you
far
can see it right up here,
enough.
that is a access that does go to the railroad. The railroad is
yes,
giving the access across, and then they are able to travel down a maintained alleyway that goes back to Southwest, which is back to the east.
So the alley of Dominion Ridge then?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
In your notes, you talk about 275
Dominion Ridge had an alley.
dwellings in this subdivision. Do you know,
This side.
with these approved lots, how close are we getting?
I don't think we're significantly close. I know the fire marshal has been calculating that number. They're looking to see. There is, and I go back to this screen, because here at these two roads, they actually have some egress out other than Twin Mountain. They go directly back to Southwest, and so that number kind of gets pushed back. Part of it does kind of depend on a future subdivision down here where they have what's called the homestead. And if those lots start being built out, then I think we start getting closer to that 275. I don't think we're there yet, but we do rely on our fire marshal team to do those counts when those plats come in.
Okay. Anyone else have questions for the staff? Okay, we're going to open it up for public comment.
Good morning, Russell with SKG Engineering. I would ask for your approval with the conditions as presented. On your count for the lots, on the previous section, that took us over the 165, which triggered then this secondary route. And so that secondary route was put in that allowed them to go a little bit over 165. So this one will get them close to the 200 count of lots within this. So once we get to the 275, unless there's some other route that gives that secondary access, that easement that was used and with kind of a limestone base surface would have to be paved with a more suitable and stabilized surface, and then that would allow them to continue beyond 275. So at this point, because the lots to the south side of Ruth Lane abut what would be a future extension of Twin Mountain Drive and the construction expense associated with constructing an arterial street, really just kind of skews the numbers and doesn't make this really economically feasible. So this is their way to be able to add some more lots out there and still kind of keep it in an affordability range. So we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Russell, what's the significance of 275, the number of lots?
That's a local amendment to the International Fire Code way back when the city was adopting the fire code in Appendix D. That was kind of an arrangement established between the development community and I guess city council ultimately that looked at those numbers. We had the fire marshal involved at that and kind of looking at, because the fire code itself is really vague to silent on the numbers. When you have future extension, it just talks about 30, but it doesn't, it just says if there's future extension, then you can go beyond that. So this was a way to set a number that was black and white so we all knew what those numbers were And so that was, the 275 was just felt like that would be a safe number. Anything above that would need a true paved secondary route.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else have questions for Russell? Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this case? Please come forward. State your name and address or single-member district. All right, I'm going to close public comment and take a motion or thoughts from my colleagues.
Make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 6-0. Actually up next. I think. Not close. Item 3 is PP 2315, Stonewall Estates at Fairview, a request for a preliminary plat in the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the city of San Angelo called Stonewall Estates at Fairview, being 39.351 acres, totaling 23 lots.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Austin Reed, Planning Technician.
Excuse me, Austin, I'm sorry to interrupt. Could you also read number 4? He's going to do a joint presentation for the preliminary
Yes.
and the final plat. Sorry. Austin.
Item 4 is FP 2340, a request to final plat Stonewall Estates at Fairview in the extraterritorial jurisdiction for 7 lots, totaling with frontal on Fairview School Road, a major collector. Partial variance has been requested for paving width to include 8 feet of paving with 2-course surface treatment to meet county road standards.
Yes.
Didn't we say it was a minor collector last time?
I don't know.
It's a major collector, I'm not sure.
It is? Okay.
So this may look familiar. Like you said last time, this came to you as a final plat. Today it's coming before you as a preliminary and a final plat. The preliminary spanning 23 lots and 39 acres. The final plat being 6 of those lots and 7 acres. It's ETJ, so there's no zoning or district, but the vision plan does hold it to be rural. Here's that preliminary plat. These are all residential lots running from about 1 to 3 acres roughly in size. There is a new local road created, Whittington Loop, running there through the middle. If you notice, there's no access to the highway down to the south. It's all off of Fairview School Road. Here's that final plat. It's kind of that panhandle section up there. 6 lots. These are roughly 1 acre in size. If you'll notice this time, they are dedicating that 5 feet of right-of-way at the top. It's probably a little hard to see. They are requesting 1 variance for paving width, once again for Fairview School Road. It is a major collector. The standard minimum for a major collector is 36 feet of paving width. Currently, they're at about 22 to 25. They are proposing, however, to add 8 feet of paving to their side, bringing it to about 30 feet. Staff thinks this is pretty reasonable. It's functioned as is for a very long time, and they're increasing their half of the road. On to the staff recommendations for the preliminary plat. Staff is recommending approval with 1 note, just that they provide staff with a signed copy of the approved preliminary plat. For the final plat, staff is recommending approval with 5 conditions and approval of the variance, those 5 conditions being for the tax certificate, the drainage study, to provide a site plan for existing structures, septic systems, and water source, to submit plans for the improvement of Fairview School Road, or to receive a variance, and to provide a letter for alternate water source from controlling water supply district. And with that, I'd be happy to try and answer any questions you might have.
I think I've got a couple of questions after looking at this. The first thing, is there anything in the subdivision ordinance that addresses flag lots in terms of platting? Do you guys know?
It's very limited. That addresses flag lots, this being in the ETJ. We typically will see flag lots onto an existing road. Sometimes with new roads, we try to prevent flag lots, but we really don't have a strong wording in our ordinance. We are working on something there that might help that, but in this case, we don't think it would. We did check with the county commissioners on this, and they were in support of the size of flags, and I believe they're 25 feet. I could be wrong on that. They're either 20 or 25 feet flags. I don't exactly remember. But they were in support of this at that time.
Can you go back to the preliminary plat?
Of course.
The two lots kind of on the south end of this preliminary plat are the lots that I'm, I guess, asking about. And we've had several scenarios where we've had large tracts of land that end up with flag lots like this, and it's not what I would think would be the preferred way to build a subdivision, which is why I was asking about it.
With those flag lots, though, could they not have access to the access road?
They're gonna go,
I mean, I understand where they connect into the loop, but if the highway's here and the access.
Currently,
road
there's
is here-
not an access road that extends that far to the east. That doesn't mean that one doesn't come in the future. It would be something to ask the developer's representative, maybe if they have any restrictions of re-subdividing those.
Okay.
But if they did re-subdivide them, they would have to come to this board to get that approved, and they would have to amend their preliminary plat and potential their final plat. I know part of the reasoning for the lot sizes is for septic systems. And
Sure.
they have to have a certain size, and then
half acre, right?
yes, for half acre, and then depending on if they do well water or if they use the water supply company, that may be larger based on well water needs.
Okay. Well, it was really more of a general question. And then the second question is there's a requested variance on the paving material, I believe. Can you guys speak to that a little bit, please? What's
Yes,
the difference between a two-course surface, or is that,
So if you look there on that image right there to the left, that is a two-course surface treatment. And so that is not a hot mix treatment. And
Okay.
so you think about asphalt as a hot mix treatment. The treatment they're requesting is to match what the county can do out in the county for maintenance.
so the current road is two-course?
That is correct.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Austin. Anyone else have questions for the staff? All right, I'm going to open it up for public comment.
Russell with SKG Engineering. We're bringing this back again because, as you know, things kind of changed. The developer, once they got to looking at it, talking to Miller's View Dual had about 7, 8 taps available that they could add to the line without having to need to do a major upgrade to an existing pump station, which was going to drive up the cost substantially. So the developer kind of thought about it and said, well, let's maybe do this in bites. Let's start with this first group. See how that goes, and then if and when if we can financially afford to upgrade this booster station for Miller's View Dual, then we'll look at coming in and doing this remaining western portion of that. So that's why we're back, seeing and talking about this again. The flag laws, from the county's perspective, they allow you to put one lot behind another.
Yes.
But any more than that, they don't really like that. And primarily, that's from a 911 addressing and safety perspective, that they really, at that point, they want you to go to something different, be it a private drive or road or something, other than stacking a bunch of flag lots. So as Mr. Vanoy pointed out, we wish that the access road continued further east, but unfortunately, it stops right there at where the existing kind of fire station facility is. So would ask for your approval of both the preliminary and the final plat as presented, and would be happy to answer any questions.
Anyone else have questions for Russell?
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. All right, anyone else wish to speak on this case? I'm going to close public comment and take thoughts or emotion.
I'll make a motion to move to approve item PP 23-15 and item FP 23-40.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve both the preliminary plat PP 2315 and final plat FP 2340. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? 6-0 on both. Item 5, RP 2339, a request to replat for Far West Edition, 6th replat in Section 2, Block 2, located in the General Commercial Zoning District on the 6,000 block of Grand Court.
Good morning again. Aaron Vanoy, Assistant Director of Planning and Development Services. This is a final plat, the 6th replat in the Far West Edition. The final plat is about 5.945 acres in the general commercial. They have frontage on FM 2288 as well as the 6,000 block of Grand Court. This is in the SMD District 6, Mr. Larry Miller, and in the Bluffs neighborhood. So if you see this image here, I tried to go out just a little bit, but you can see 67 that comes here. This is FM 2288. The HEB complex is over here with a number of retail services. This right here is the existing car wash, and so they are looking at platting this area right here with an extension of Drexel that will come across into that area. And I'll show you the plat in just a moment. Would really create 3 commercial lots that are general commercial in that area. And as we've seen the growth in that part of town, this is just kind of an extension of that growth. Let me get all this off of there. All right. So here is that plat. So you see the existing commercial down here on the, what I'm going to call the southeast corner. You see lot 1N and 1P at the top, and then 1M kind of there in the middle. You see where Drexel Drive comes across. So there currently is a curb cut right here for the car wash. They are looking to dedicate that from the car wash to the city as a future road that comes all the way across FM 2288. You can see it, Drexel Drive is established on the east side, and it's going to come across to the west side and connect to Grand Court Road. This is the area that we, city staff, believe is problematic. We think there is a traffic challenge on FM 2288 to begin with, and allowing Drexel to come across, while it does maybe open up these 2 lots a little bit more directly to FM 2288, depending on what goes there, it could be problematic in the future. So here are some of our concerns. Let me get those arrows off of there. I apologize. So in our purpose statements of the subdivision ordinance, this is a purpose statement B, to protect and provide for the public health, safety, and general welfare of the city of San Angelo. C is to provide for the orderly, safe, and efficient development of the city and surrounding area, and to provide streets that ensure safe, convenient, and functional systems for vehicular and pedestrian circulation. So again, the extension of Drexel Drive is a safety concern as it would come across and potentially could cause more traffic. There is an elevation change from north to south, and I've got a couple of photos that might be able to illustrate that. The speed limit from the north coming in, which is Stafford Drive, which kind of lines up with Rio Concho, is at 45 miles per hour, and it doesn't appear to change any miles per hour all the way to Highway 67. We could not find where it slowed down. So we think currently that 45 miles per hour is the speed, particularly heading south. If you were to turn out of Drexel to head north, about 200 feet north, there's a speed limit sign that says 45 miles an hour heading north. Not sure, we didn't find one from 67 going up to Drexel Drive, but again, there's lots of traffic in there, so maybe it's self-controlled. FM 2288 is a 5-lane major arterial connecting Highway 67, and that should be, instead of Hay 87, Highway 87. Maybe it says Hay, but it is Highway 87. And there are various neighborhoods and commercial areas, particularly in the last half mile for FM 2288 and Highway 67. I'm going to go back to this image. I should have had another image that may be a little higher, but if you think of up here is Rio Concho West. There's a couple of facilities back in this area, but then you have the bluffs that extend way out there. They really have three ways in or out of the bluffs. You either go to Arden Road and then to Houston Hart, you go Melrose to the access road at Houston Hart, or you come here at FM 2288 and come down to 67, or if you're going back the other way. The Bluffs is a pretty significant neighborhood. We know down the road there could be future neighborhoods. The question is, does this intersection being added here cause more safety issues with people crossing FM 2288 because Drexel Drive has now become a city road that extends across? The city staff believes that is true, that is a safety issue that we need to address somehow. So also within our subdivision, under Chapter 9, Section 3, street pattern, this is minor or local streets should be laid out to conform as much as possible to the topography, to discourage use by through traffic, to permit efficient drainage and utility systems, and to require the minimum number of streets necessary to provide convenient and safe access to property. We don't believe this extension of Drexel Drive really meets that full statement. The lots don't necessarily need access to Drexel Drive. Does it make it easier for those private property owners? Potentially, but does it make it safer for the citizens? That's what we have concerns about. They do have frontage on FM 2288. They do have frontage on Grand Court Road. So having this short extension and with the topography difference, we just didn't think that it quite met up to this standard. Again, there may be some drainage concerns if the new extension, now that might be that's the natural drainage area. There may be ways to mitigate that through a drainage study, but at this time, although that's a condition if that was for the plat to go forward, we just wanted to bring that up. By adding Drexel Drive, we just did not think that that would be the safest thing at this point. We think there may be some other ways, but we would have to work with them on maybe some strategic design or something of that nature to figure out what would be the best. So here are some of those photos. This is from south looking north. This is just past the intersection of Highway 67 and FM 2288 looking north. Obviously, you can see the Chick-fil-A on the right and the hotel on the left. This was on a Saturday morning. Still some fairly good traffic through there on a Saturday morning. It's not easily able to tell, but you can still tell that there is an incline that goes up to a high point, and then it drops down off that high point. Then this bottom right is a little bit closer. You can see the development that's happening over there, that actually they're getting very close to getting their certificate of occupancy. You can see the car wash on the left. This already has a intersection that is controlled by Grand Court Road, and then a private access that goes to HEB there to the right. And as anyone that's been out there, that's a challenging intersection. We're trying not to add the same thing just a few hundred feet, and I say a few hundred, it may be 500 feet or 600 feet. I think the applicant tell us a little bit better on that actual distance. Then this is heading south. The top one is approximately just south of Rio Concho West. You can kind of see that this one, you can definitely see there's more of an elevation change. You can see probably the second, maybe third floor of the hotel there on the right. You really don't see the development on the left. Again, that's heading downhill at about 45 miles an hour is the speed limit in that area. This one is a little bit closer, and of course you can see on the right side that there is an elevation change, and then the housing there on the left side. So really we were just trying to show the elevation change with this. There is a drainage issue. Well, I shouldn't say drainage issue, I apologize for that. It's actually a drainage system that's there on the right side that tries to collect water and get them down to the large detention pond in front of the HEB system and get that across to the Red Arroyo and down to the river. With that, currently staff is recommending denial of the Far West addition. I'll be happy to answer any questions the best I can, and the applicants are here to discuss as well.
Can we go back to the plat, please, or one of the photos that shows Green Canal? So I look at that where Drexel is. So where Green Canal comes across and you've got people exiting out of the Chick-fil-A and all of that, Orange Theory, whatnot. That is really congested. So the way that I personally perceive this, by adding the connection up to Drexel, I don't see people necessarily shooting across Drexel, but I feel like it would ease the traffic tension on the lower portion with those people turning left and right coming out of the HEB and Sonora Bank and all of that, and allowing people to actually come up and maybe take a left without having to kind of play chicken down a little further. I mean, that's my personal opinion, but I feel like it would actually lighten the traffic load on the lower portion.
In denying this, does the staff feel like that there's not enough room on 2288, see if I can say this the way I want to say it, from Grand Court's entrance to Drexel's? That footage, I think you said maybe 500 feet or something you said, is,
I'm not sure of the exact footage. It's on this plat, and I did not pay attention to that as strongly as I should have. I think it's 500 foot or less, but I'm not 100% sure. The applicant would know that. That is part of our concern, that that's not a great distance. However, our subdivision really doesn't speak to that very well in areas like this. It is a concern. Now, to be fair, FM 2288 is a state road and state right-of-way. And so that is part of the equation. Just city staff at this time just didn't quite think that it met all the elements of our subdivision ordinance, and that's our reason for requesting denial, or recommending denial.
Aaron, I think I heard you say that, another area of concern is further north of there, the fact that there's a pretty significant elevation change coming over that hill. And
Yes.
that would move this, I guess, entrance and exit closer to that hill where there's less time.
So are we
to
talking about
adjust.
the highest utility line there on the bottom right photo?
So
Or
you
where
can-
exactly would this pop out?
Somewhere, and this really is not a great angle, because that looks like it's a little further north, but if you follow the drainage down to the right, and let me take that off, this may be the better way. Right past that car, I don't know how far, but just a little bit further, you can just start seeing the car wash, and that is the development to the right. This higher area is the development. I think the applicant could say this is exactly where it is, but this is, again, this, you can see the elevation there, the change in elevation as you're going down, and people that are coming to town seem to have the highest speed as opposed to people that are going out of town. And that's our big concern there.
So is the issue with the elevation change, is it drainage, or do you believe it's a traffic consideration? And can you see the cars when you're coming down? I mean, it looks like there is an elevation change, but just judging by the picture, I can see down that road significantly.
We do think it's primarily a traffic issue, and secondarily, maybe a drainage issue for their development of how that drainage comes out and where it will go to. Now, they may have a solution for that. We do think it is a traffic issue. Looking to the right, say if you're looking to the north, if you're coming off of Drexel Drive, the question is, are you able to determine how fast that southbound traffic is coming? Now, that may be in any situation, but there is that elevation change. You do see, I think you could see cars coming down, but we still think it's just a safety issue that we've got to find a way to solve maybe. And I'm not sure the exact solution, but we felt fairly strong enough that it didn't quite meet our subdivision, that we needed some more time to maybe discuss it and find some solutions.
So I mean, this is obviously an area of growth for the city and, attractive commercial tracks because of everything else that's already developed around it. So is there anything you can speak more to potential solution for trying to alleviate some of the concerns that we have about access in and out without, causing other traffic issues?
Well, there's a couple of things that could be done potentially. There may be all the way from just as simple as signage further north about an intersection coming up or something there. It could be that instead of this being a dedicated road, could it become a private drive that's narrower, that would potentially reduce speeds coming across? Not that's always an option. There, bigger picture items is, does that or that need to be a signalized intersection? Now, that takes a longer-term study. Again, this corner, since it is being replatted, does touch that intersection. However, you have more stuff here. And so is there something at one of those two intersections, long-term, that can be done to help slow traffic down or signalize or something that gives people a little bit more warning that there's higher traffic in the area?
The area that on the other side that goes to HEB, is that a dedicated street or that's a private drive?
Yeah, could you go back to the
Sure.
aerial that shows, yep, right there.
So this is a private drive. That's just an access road, if you will. This is Drexel Drive. That is the dedicated public right-of-way. And then, of course, right here, Grand Court is a dedicated public right-of-way.
So why did the car wash do the curb cuts there?
Well, it was really for their circulation as they come in here to the south and they exit out this way. And I didn't mean to draw it that far across, but they exit out right here. They work through TxDOT to get the curb cut, as that's their jurisdiction. And that's just the way that one developed at this time.
Okay, going back to the elevation issue, and I know, I believe Russell's representing, sorry, I can't get it on green, okay. Sorry about that, I believe Russell represents the applicant, but with that being said, since lot 1N, I believe, is owned by the developer who's bringing this in front of us, is there not something that the developer can do in order to assist with the grading for sightline visibility? Obviously, like cutting trees back, but I mean, you've got to have a certain visibility when you're coming up to obviously 2288. So I just, has the applicant spoke on what their plan is? Because again, I still feel like pushing a little bit of traffic further north, especially somebody that's going to be taking a left out of that little area onto 2288, that's far safer than on Grand Canal, where people are cutting across and coming this way towards Sam's, personally.
That's a good question. We know that the right-of-way in this area is 100 feet wide. We know the paving is not near that wide. We know there's a drainage that comes across here, and I believe, and Mr. Gully might be able to help. And let me go back just to see. You can just barely see it, but it appears that with the drainage, there may also be either sidewalk or that's a concrete drainage, and so the trees really may be on that private property line. I think he would have a better idea of what type of development may be going in there and if there's any site grading that would take place. We have not seen a site plan because it's just not required at this juncture yet. This is just really the plat trying to lay out the lots.
And then I'm sorry, what's the retirement community north of that? Is it Rio Concho?
There's Rio Concho West that's here, and then a couple of other facilities that are in the area.
And there hasn't been any discussion on them extending their private road out, right? So it's not like you've got three in a row.
Well, they have a drive that's much further
Much
north,
further.
almost at the kind of the peak of the hill, if you
Right.
will. Yeah, that's what they have at this time.
Aaron, with the traffic concerns that you've raised about this area, if this plat is approved, you've indicated that 2288 is a state highway. So what's the process for addressing traffic concerns? Is there a traffic study that could potentially be triggered?
Our city engineering group, and I don't believe they're here this morning, did put a comment or actually a note saying that a traffic study could be triggered. I am unclear of what that actual trigger is, if that's something at the development stage. It didn't seem like it was something that would be triggered at the plat stage, so I'm assuming that maybe at the site plan stage, there's a trigger somewhere for them to require a study. From our understanding from the state, since there's already a curb cut there for that private exit, if you will, as of right now, although it's a private entrance to the car wash, they didn't see how they would be able to stop something expanding it just a certain distance to the north to say, here's a larger curb cut.
So I'm looking at this and I'm wondering why a private road is not an adequate and acceptable solution to this problem. Why does it need to be a public street? We're adding a block of city street that the city would maintain in lieu of, I mean, I can't imagine that we would prevent they have the direct and abutting access for all three of these lots. For circulation purposes, they can add a road, just like Drexel, but make it a private road.
What's the width difference between public and private?
Well, that's a great question. On private, it would have to be, what does their site plan look like? What are they proposing? So fire marshal's gonna say they need something that at least 26 foot wide. A public road that they're planning there, which would be a local road classified, they would have a 50-foot right-of-way and a 40-foot paving. And so
So is
potentially
it-
between a difference between 40 and 26 feet, but again, it could be something, they may propose something larger, and we'd look at that at the site plan stage.
Okay, I apologize, I just kind of, all the
okay.
numbers just went in my head at the same time. But blame it on the baby. So the right-of-way difference between the two, I'm so sorry, Aaron.
Well, here you'd have dedicated right-of-way that the city will be responsible for maintaining 50 feet wide.
Okay,
If it is a private drive, access road, whatever you want to call it, the fire marshal would say they would need a minimum of 26 feet. Now, the actual paving width of a dedicated local road is 40 feet. So there's 5 on either side for potential utilities or infrastructure things. So really, you're looking at the difference between 40 feet and 26 feet.
so would it not be safer technically to be a public road because you've got a better right-of-way? Or am I not thinking about this correctly?
Narrower roads slows down traffic. I mean, there's lots of studies, I don't have any in my hand or anything, but narrower roads slows traffic down. Now, we also think narrower roads, well, that puts things very close. Again, this would be their private property, and how they laid out their parking plan and whatever their development is to get to those areas.
The question I might ask at this time is, the private road from right next to Chick-fil-A that comes from the HEB area, is that private road, which is the 40 feet, is that correct? Am I understanding what you just said about a private?
I do not know the width of that. I did
Okay.
not look at that. I don't think, if I was to compare this image and look at Drexel Drive just to the north and look at that, I don't believe it's as wide as Drexel Drive.
Right.
And Drexel Drive is a 40-foot paved width. So my assumption is that it's narrower, but I don't know that for 100% sure.
Well, because it's the only exit on 2288 from this commercial area, it stays congested constantly. And then you have the traffic from Sherwood Way that flows up, people going from there to 2288 to go to either into the residential area of the Bluffs or into the commercial area where HEB is. It is constant. And would not, I mean, I'm just asking what the staff thought about this. You've got a little bitty width private road. The only thing right now that's moving all of that traffic from Sherwood Way to that road, but it's not even a street, private, wouldn't opening Drexel pull some of that traffic away and it be more of a help than a hindrance?
I agree.
Well, that's a good question. I would say Drexel to the north is open on the east side. And if most of that traffic is already turning left to the south, that exists right now, and we know people are not utilizing it that way. Opening Drexel as a through street and across, I don't see that changing that scenario very much.
And I know speed keeps getting brought up, but I mean, how long is the addition of that Drexel? It was not very long, in my opinion. I can't read it.
I would say it's between 400 and 500
500
feet,
feet.
but that's just looking at the distances there real quickly. It may not be quite that
So
long.
what's the hindrance on requiring the developer to put speed bumps or a stop sign that's flashing? I mean, I don't know really what the ordinance is on that or how that you go about doing that, but again, I mean, 400 to 500 feet, I just don't see somebody clipping across doing 60 miles an hour down that street, personally. But, I mean, there are those
Well, I think the
wackos.
concern is 2288, and
Right.
people trying to cross that road, not necessarily on Drexel, the speed.
That area is so congested now, though, that if we don't start putting in some sort of relief, heading north, I mean, Chick-fil-A is probably the worst one. I don't know how I get out of there. If I didn't,
Yes.
I don't know how you get in it.
I don't know how you get in it. So I think that we've got to look at some relief for both Drexel and the private road.
I agree. And then looking at, just the development map, going north in front of, and I didn't pull up who actually owns it, but in front of Rio Concho, that's also general commercial. So if we're looking at a 5 to 10-year development plan and having that land right there that's currently vacant as frontage potentially broken down into other commercial tracts with drives coming out, the speed on 2288 is going to have to change. If it hasn't been marked down to 35, it's going to have to be because of, again, the congestion that we're already dealing with at that point. So personally, I don't see an issue with having that a public road with Drexel continuing on Grand Canal.
Okay. Anyone else have comments for the staff? Why don't we open it up for public comment?
Good morning again, Russell with SKG Engineering. Y'all bring up great questions, great comments, great insight regarding kind of this plat and this intersection. And it really kind of boils down to public versus private at the end of the day. There's the existing entrance there that's currently just serving the car wash. When the car wash was purchased from the current property owner, that was platted out. They kind of have this arrangement that is a joint shared access. TxDOT was going to limit and control access onto 2288 in this area. So that in working with TxDOT with the car wash, that was the optimal location from TxDOT's perspective, was to line it up with Drexel. And so that's kind of how that's become established. We had a consultation with staff early on about this as kind of we were getting in, trying to look, and we've had those same conversations, those same thoughts, public versus private. What's the best way to do this? And so at the time, staff brought up that this is TxDOT, 2288 is TxDOT controlled. That's permitted as a private driveway. You have to go and get TxDOT's approval and blessing, if you will, to convert that to what would, if we did go as a public right-of-way, as a city street, have to have TxDOT's approval to change it to a city street connection, if you will. So we reached out, emailed TxDOT. They had their internal conversations, and the response back was, yes, our consensus is that we would permit that if requested as an entrance as a city street. So TxDOT's been talked to, they've approved it. I don't know how, at this point, we have an email approval of that process. We'd have to go through the formal process with TxDOT to make that formal. So that we're going to be asking for your approval, so that certainly should be a condition of your approval, is to have that. That is something we're going to have to do anyway. If we don't get TxDOT approval, then it can't convert to a city street. So, and there was a lot of notes, a lot of things brought up. The elevation change on 2288, if you look at 2288, there's a sidewalk on the east side of 2288. So sidewalks are typically not installed where your slope exceeds 5% because they wouldn't be handicap accessible unless they had rails and all this other stuff. So that tells me, I didn't go lay a level on it, I was going to, but that tells me that the slope of 2288 does not exceed 5% or 1 in 20. So maybe for San Angelo, that seems steep. Other parts of the world, that's not really steep. And so if you look at that and you're sitting at that Drexel intersection looking north, it looks, oh, wow, that's way up there. San Angelo terms, that's maybe way up there. So it's about 850 feet up to Appaloosa, where Appaloosa crosses, and then there's a little bit more of an incline, and then it starts going back down. So one thing that's always important for intersections, signalized or otherwise, is stopping sight distance. So it's a long, straight, consistent slope past Appaloosa. So we have well over a 900-foot sight visibility if people are coming south into that intersection. If someone comes up and they're looking to exit from our location and cross the two lanes in the center lane to go north, and then they have a good sight visibility. As Mr. Vanoy pointed out, there is that drainage ditch pretty well immediately adjacent to the west side of the FM 2288, so that opens up some visibility. Yes, as you continue going north, there's a kind of a little hill or a knoll there. In looking at the site plan for the potential user, that may come down a little bit just to help the site fit on there. It's an awesome view. It's one of the best views of San Angelo up there because of the height. And so, yes, there could be some site visibility concerns, but really there's not, because that drainage way, and it's even concreted. So it's like this is going to stay open. It allows for, the San Angelo requires a 30-foot sight triangle, if you will, at intersections. And so because of that offset with the drainage infrastructure there, that even helps enhance that site visibility. So we really do not see that safety perspective, if you will, because of this elevation that's being talked about. So, and here, you're not going to catch me saying this very often, but this going in as a city street, being commercial zoning, would trigger a sidewalk. So as a private drive, they won't have a requirement for a sidewalk. So as a city street, they would have a requirement to put a sidewalk there adjacent to it. So I think there's a little, maybe a benefit to a sidewalk to this. So, and that's been part of that discussion. We have looked, batted this back and forth, public, private. The sidewalk, I think for this area, there are sidewalks there that TxDOT had installed, so this would be a great place for that connectivity. Also, as a public right-of-way connection, that's going to trigger a stop sign now. Currently, there's not a stop sign at that private drive approach and access point onto 2288. So really everything we're seeing is that as a public right-of-way, there's more safety controls in place, or would be in place, to the public benefit. And you bring up great points about, let's move some of that traffic a little further north. I know you get hemmed up in that area and you want to cross and get across the Grand Court, or leave Chick-fil-A and try to get back on to 2288 to go back into town. If it's queued up there, some people kind of will go a little bit further north, go up to Drexel, and then come back. So there already is kind of that happening a little bit, and that relief kind of going on. So, if you look at comparison to land mass, use, volume, we're a much smaller area than what with HEB and all of this use is going to be. So this additional improvement is not going to generate a large volume of traffic right here, if you will, compared to what Chick-fil-A and some of those other areas, the bank and everything else there that is doing. So I think the further we get from that big intersection with a public access point to it, we believe that we're kind of maybe taking a little bit of a load off of that intersection that is so close there at Drexel, and then the private drive across to the east. I'm bouncing around a little bit here. To the north, Rio Concho Communities, they own that land, they're not really looking to develop that. That's kind of a buffer for their retirement community. So from what I've understood from them, they really don't have an interest to sell that, develop that. That's just kind of a buffer that they're just leaving. Ultimately, someday it probably will develop as land values go up and somebody waves a lot of money in their face. But there again, TxDOT's going to look at that, maybe even some of those elevation differentials. So there'll be very limited access, maybe immediately north, because of some of the elevation change.
But even across 2288 up by Appaloosa, there's some development going on there too. So again, my point is, I just think that eventually we're going to have to address the speed limit coming in or having flashing interstate or intersection signs, which I don't know how you get that, but it's going to end up happening just with the amount of development.
And you're right, as that develops, TxDOT monitors, they do traffic counts. Once those traffic counts get up to certain levels, that'll trigger warrant studies, and then they'll look, okay, do we need to signalize? Do we need to lower the speed? Do we need to put a controlled median through here? TxDOT's going to look at that. So I feel comfortable, we can trust TxDOT. They're the transportation experts. They've got that, if you will, for controlling and what happens on FM 2288. So our request today is that you would actually approve the plat as presented. We realize staff didn't provide conditions. The typical conditions would be tax certificate, drainage study, water and sewer plans as needed, street plans. So all of that will be addressed. When we talk about drainage, if it's private, we don't have to control the depth of flow in the street. As a public street, we have to evaluate and control the depth of flow in the street. So there again, as public, we have more control over it. There was some concern talking about width. A narrower width would constrict or slow down traffic. We would be happy if you would see that as wisdom. We were intending to put a sidewalk in there, so we were planning on a 36-foot wide street. If you see wisdom in a 32-foot or some other narrower street through there to help control traffic, you're not going to get an objection from us at all from that. So also would just be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I have one. You made a comment about TxDOT. For the car wash, there is a cut there for people to go out, to get out of the car wash. And you said, if I understood you correctly, that TxDOT has already, in an email, made a comment that they would not have a problem with that being a public cut.
Yes, ma'am. that is-
To finish it, just the rest of it for the owner of this land we're talking about and the owner of the car wash that equally have that cut. So if TxDOT is thinking that a cut for a public road is not a problem and they would eventually approve all of that, then I guess my question is, did I understand that correctly? And TxDOT has said in an email, not the formal stuff, but that they would not have a problem with a public cut.
Yes, ma'am, that is correct. And I think I went on to kind of expand that is, in order for it to be a city street, we will have to have that TxDOT
Yes.
permit approval in place for that. So we're happy for that to be a condition of approval, that this is approved condition upon TxDOT approval to this becoming a city street.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have questions for Russell?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gully.
Good morning, I'm Steve Eustace. I'm a commercial real estate broker, and we represent the owners of the property, James and Philip Duncan. And I first met them when they were little bitty kids sitting at the feet of their father, Bubba Duncan, who was one of the most quality developers I've ever known. The boys do developments all over the southern United States, and they're really quality. They understand. And so we want to do it right, and safety is part of it. We have, can you put the proposed plat up, please, Aaron?
That one?
That one.
All right.
Okay, so just so we make sure we're all on the same page, It would be very difficult to sell all of this property, which would be the lot 1M, 1N, I mean, all three of those to one buyer. It's just not going to happen. We have the proposed lot 1N, the 1.5 acres on the corner, we have that under contract. There is no way, there is not access from 2288 onto that property. Does everybody agree with that?
Currently, no.
Currently, no, and there's not gonna be, because it's a concrete embankment. And I don't see how that could ever happen.
Okay.
Plus, the distance from the curb cut that TxDOT's already granted, even though that's a user curb cut. I just asked Aaron if he could pull up a plat, the existing plat of that car wash lot, and he can, and that's okay, but just know that that lot has a little panhandle on it.
So you can just see it here. That's actually private property right now.
Yeah, see that little onset right, well, you can't see it, but,
It's hard to tell here.
yeah, can you blow it up? No.
Unfortunately.
So, anyway, that's got a little flag, and the reason, and it flags across that curb cut so that the user to the north will have access to the property. So let's stop and recognize that without any change whatsoever, the car wash traffic and whatever gets developed on that north lot has access to 2288 already. So we spent at least an hour and a half, 2 hours in my pickup all over this property, and we bet that I'd have 4 flats. I only got one. Trying to figure out what are the solutions here, because you got to have a development that's viable as far as being absorbed by users. You've got to have safe access. We've got to account for drainage. So we spent a lot of time trying to figure out what the best way is. And we definitely can put in a private street. We think it's better to put in a city street. It'd be cheaper on them to put in a private street because we'll pass that cost on to the users. It's really, we feel like that more traffic, it will divert some of the traffic out the other way. It's not all going to come out at the current curb cut. But again, that lot on the north and the car wash can already use that. We just think it's better to make it go on into the development so people can come back around Grand Court. We don't think speed on Drexel is an issue in either direction. There'll be stop signs on the east side of Arden Road and on the west side of Arden Road. I don't know what else to say. We feel like that we have tried to create the best development that we could under all the circumstances, the elevation issues, the drainage issues. But we're open for your suggestions. But we think this is the best approach.
Okay, if the city comes back and asks that a traffic light be installed at that intersection, is that going to change your plans for this site?
So I've done traffic impact analysis in Austin and other places. I've never done one in San Angelo. We don't have a TIA company here. They're expensive. They take a long time to do. And I'm not saying they're not good, but for this little, I mean, have y'all ever done one?
No, but I think the concern that's been raised by the staff and everyone up here is that there's a lot of traffic congestion in that area already. And if adding a wider road that encourages traffic to cross that 2288 at this new intersection creates a safety issue, and TxDOT says we need a light in there because you guys want a road, I don't want to go through this process and have you guys say, well, this is what we want. Oh, wait, TxDOT told us we had to put a light in, so we're going to go private road now.
Once we get into the permit with TxDOT, they look at those traffic counts and land areas, and they kind of have some formulations and that would say hey, because of the size of this development, we feel like you need to do a TIA, or there's even some little bit simpler versions of that, warrant studies, whatever they may be. So that all could be tied to that approval of this permit. So TxDOT having the jurisdiction here, they'll have the authority, once we make that formal application, to say, hey, we believe that you need to do a TIA. Out on 34th Street crossed, and they built that new Kent Quick. Because of the size of that triggered a TIA, and so the study and everything else went that way. So they have the wisdom and control over those when they want to see that, it'll get triggered, and that's a condition of approval.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't think I have anything else to add. I mean, we can certainly put in a private street. We just kind of collectively thought y'all would prefer a city street, but we can certainly do a private street if that's what y'all prefer.
I think the greatest objection I have personally with the city street is probably twofold. One, I'm concerned about the safety of that intersection and widening the road and encouraging traffic to cross.
And are you saying crossing from
Crossing
the west?
2288 on Drexel,
Which way? Both ways?
both ways.
Okay.
I think if you have a wider road there, it encourages folks to cross there.
If they're gonna cross, they're already gonna go on Grand Canal, so taking them up 500 feet and further away from the light seems way more safe.
We can.
Potentially.
I tell you, another option we could do is, what if on Drexel, the new Drexel, when you come up the stop sign, it's right only. So they have to turn, they don't have to cross.
I don't know that we have the authority to set limits like that.
But we do, well, I don't know who has the authority.
If it's a city street, you don't.
Yeah, I don't know.
And then obviously the maintenance of the road. And I don't think that that's necessarily a concern for your client, given the circumstance. I'm sure he's going to sell the lots to someone else that's going to be burdened with maintaining whatever it is that goes in there. But, you know, it is a cost consideration. We're adding a block of public street to improve access to a couple of lots.
Right. And I don't say this to be flippant to you, Trevor, because you know I respect that daylights out of you, but those are going to be taxable lots and
course.
improvements.
Of course.
Yeah. So, but I know, I see your point. It would be maintenance on the city's part, but we think there'd be more value in the lots if they were
Right.
public streets. That's my only point.
Okay.
All right.
Anyone else have questions for Mr. Eustace?
Thanks.
Thank you, Steve.
One of the things that I see is that we already have that kind of congestion on that public street, but where, again, HEV and all of those commercial of turning right, turning left. I know I've tried to do both. I'm just thinking that it would help that little intersection with this going to be commercial, 3 commercial lots with their own customers that need to get in and out. If you don't have something there and they have to go all the way to Grand Court, which is right across from the, you're going to really add to it there. So I think, and as far as public versus private, I would rather it be a public street if we're going to have commercial this large. The 2.029 acres is not a small.
It's a big tract.
Yes. And so I'm for the possibility of a city street, B. Drexel Drive across.
Okay. Does anyone else wish to speak on this case? If so, please come forward. State your name and address or single-member district.
Hi, I'm James Duncan. I'm with the seller. I'm at 2021 Valley View. And which single-member district is that?
That's good.
Hebert.
Not enough coffee, sorry. I think y'all went through almost everything that we went through in terms of trying to figure out the best way of doing this, because The one thing that I wanted to add, just real briefly, was when we sold to the car wash and they went through the process of getting the TxDOT permit, we retained an easement for the entirety of our remainder tract.
Yes, sir.
So whatever we put there will have the right to use the curb cut that's been approved by TxDOT.
Yes, sir.
So, so our analysis was public, private, or a combination, and those are the choices.
Right.
So we went through the same thing that y'all did. I just wanted to point out that when we went through it, ultimately we thought, or couldn't see the difference between if it's a private, they're going to come on 2288, they have a decision tree, left, right, or straight. Mostly, we think it'd be left or right, hopefully more right. That's all I wanted to add. So I think y'all have flushed out the same issues we struggled with. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. All right, anyone else wish to speak on this case? I'm going to close public comment and take thoughts or emotion. Does anyone else have questions for the staff?
I don't have any questions for staff, but that is a very congested area. People are gonna turn in there one way or another.
Yes.
I think it's better that it goes through so that they don't have to try to turn around and come back out if they turn in there on accident, is my feelings. I'd feel better if it was a public road because it'll be wider.
I'm with you.
Just my feelings, because it's gonna happen. Even if you do where it ends in there, they're gonna go in there and turn around and come back out. If they're not meant to turn there and, oh crud, I turned too early. As well as, I understand the traffic's an issue, and TxDOT will take that in consideration. Anything you do on that road's gotta go through TxDOT anyway.
Right.
So, just my feelings.
I'm gonna be the one to start the motion. I'm gonna make a motion to approve the plat as presented, with our typical conditions of drainage study, tax cert, all of the conditions, and obviously adding in the text on approval, which we know is mandated anyway.
I'll second that.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the plat with regular plat conditions.
Chairman, would you like me to just read those conditions to make sure that we capture them
If you
correctly?
don't mind,
Please,
I
thank
would
you.
appreciate it.
Okay, so that is we would look at 8 conditions for this one. The first one would be our tax certificate. The second would be extension of water, extension of sewer. The fourth would be addition of service taps to each lot, a drainage study, the TxDOT requirement, Mr. Gully's sidewalk plans as needed, and then the last would be street improvements. And maybe there's a question there from staff's mind. The applicant did say, if you want us to build a more narrow street, they're happy to do a more narrow street than the 40-foot or the 36 and a sidewalk. Is there a desire to say, well, let's do a 30-foot wide road, or is 36 make sense with the sidewalk?
And what is Drexel
Ma'am.
now?
Drexel on the east side is a 40-foot local road.
I would say it needs to be the same.
Okay.
36.
Yeah, I think that for the crazy people that may
Okay.
go straight, it needs to be the same width.
So those would be our standard comments.
Yeah.
Okay. Brittany, do you want to revise your motion to include those? Or,
Sure. So I will move to approve the plat as presented with the following 8 conditions: the tax certificate, the extension of the water and the sewer, adding the service taps to the lots, conducting a drainage study, including the sidewalk. And my writing is so awful, sorry. The TxDOT approval, and I put something about a street.
Street improvement.
Thank you, street improvement. So, yes.
okay. We have a motion.
I'll second that motion. I think I'd rather amend it to just be one thing, that it be a 40-foot street.
Okay, and I'm good with that, Candy.
Okay.
Could it be 36 with a sidewalk?
Under our design guidelines, yes, it can be 36 feet with a sidewalk. since
Or
it's a local
40
street.
without?
They're gonna have to put a sidewalk in anyway, that's why I'm
Correct.
asking
That's
about
based on
that.
the zoning
And that works for
designation.
me. Okay.
So 36 feet with sidewalk. Okay. We have a motion and a second. We're going to take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. So 5-1. Approved. Okay. Rezonings and comprehensive plan amendments. City Council has final authority for approval of rezonings and amendments to the comprehensive plan. Item 1 is PD 2308, a request to rezone from Ranch and Estate zoning district to planned development zoning district with an underlying general commercial zoning allowing kennels, parking, exercise area, staff area, and the housing of dogs and cats and small animals while awaiting adoption.
Good morning, Commissioners. Sherry Bailey, Principal Planner. You have, as you've indicated, a request for a PD for the property at 1521 South Concho Park Drive. That is city-owned property, and we're bringing it to you as a planned development because we think that the temporary use or intended temporary use plus the future use of that area is something that we really need to talk about. And going to a PD allows us to require a plan for future development and a plan for the temporary development. And we're looking at, right now, the zoning is R&E, and we felt that Ranch and Estate was not the appropriate zoning for the city-owned property. So we are bringing that to you again as a PD. It is an SMD number 3, Harry Thomas's district, and it is a Glenmore neighborhood. The future land use, there is a triangle that is in the front, and that triangle is where a lot of the old fire training facility was. That is the higher area of property. That is where they temporarily want to house animal control while their existing facility is being remodeled over the next few years. So they would come in, remodel those existing buildings, two of the buildings for dog pens within them, and the third building for staff. Then they would like to use this area in here as both a parking area and an event, where you go in and able to have a show of dogs and people come in to pick a dog. Then this area, this large area here that's right on the river, and it's a little over 3 acres, has a elevation issue. Part of it comes in under the 100-year flood. The rest of it is lower than that. We would like to keep that as open space with an emphasis on a future trail that would go along the property and open up the area a little bit more to allow the public to see and visit the river in that area. And on the zoning map, we are proposing splitting the PD with the underlying emphasis with open space for the area for public enjoyment, hopefully in the future, and then general commercial as the underline for the animal control area. We use general commercial because if the city were to decide to develop that property or to sell that property, there is neighborhood to the north and across the road. There's a small area of heavy commercial and neighborhood commercial right where Paint Rock Road joins Avenue L and Concho Park Drive. But general commercial, we felt, was a better use than going any heavier in the commercial. And we sent out 4 notifications within 200 feet. We did not receive any in opposition or any in support. In examining the intent, it is to convert, as I said, the existing structures now for a temporary facility for animal control while their facility is being remodeled. And then the open space would be for future use of the public as a whole. The overall plan that we're presenting, we think, is compatible with the city's comprehensive plan. It fits in past actions that have occurred. We believe the proposed plans are consistent with the zoning ordinance. We don't have a problem with that. Staff believes that this plan would also be compatible with the surrounding area's existing uses and intended uses, and that the intent as a public use was similar to the fire training center, but in this case, it's much broader and allows more public use. We hope for that development of a trail and opening up the area. We don't believe that there will be a negative effect on the natural environment any more than is existing right now. We believe that the major remodeling of the existing animal control facility, this is the best compromise for that facility while it's undergoing the changes. And it would bring the animal control area and the dogs and cats in that need homes in a more visible spot while their site is being remodeled. And we believe this use provides a compatible transition for a low-density use area. And with that, staff is recommending approval of the rezoning from a single-family residential to a planned development with open space and general commercial as the underlying uses for the 5.436 acres located at 521 South Concho Park Drive. And we are recommending 3 conditions: that any new signage that would go on the site would have to come in for Planning and Development Services Department review, that all new site lighting that might be put on that site would be shielded, downward emitting, and control of that lighting, and that plans will be submitted for the different use area, building, remodeling, fenced areas, trail, and open space as time goes on. And with that, are there any questions?
Just a quick revision. It says from single-family residential, but it's R&E.
R&E, yeah.
Thank you.
The general use is single family at R&E.
Sherry, the primary use that's proposed is a temporary shelter for the animal.
Yes, and we
facility.
don't know how long that temporary shelter may be needed. It depends on the remodeling.
Is a dog kennel and boarding service as proposed for this use, is it a conditional use under general commercial, or is it allowed by right?
I think the understanding, and we've had this discussion going back and forth between ourselves. When we develop a planned development, we understand that allows things that normally would not necessarily be allowed because there are certain restrictions on those. In this case, that we felt that the animal control was a city use and that we could feel that it would fit temporarily under that PD.
It is not allowed by right, though.
That is
Okay.
correct.
So the reason we went with lower instead of the heavy, which would allow it by right,
Yeah.
was because it's a
better
PD,
compatible use.
and if your PD was to go away, and you're looking back at what your zoning was, we didn't think that heavy was what we wanted it to be. So this is
Agree.
only allowed because of your PD.
Agree 100%.
Thank you.
The only thing I'd like to discuss is putting some limit on the conditional use so that when the city vacates this, after the remodel's complete in 3, 5 years, whatever it is, that it reverts back to general commercial, and we don't have the continued option and use as a
Right.
as a kennel facility for eternity.
And I think that's certainly reasonable, yes.
Okay. Does anyone else have questions for the staff? Okay, I'm going to open it up for public comment. Anyone wish to speak on this case? Please come forward. All right, I'm going to close public comment and take thoughts or emotion from my colleagues here.
What time frame were you thinking, just?
What time frame does the city have for, it doesn't need to be overly restrictive. I just
Right.
didn't want it to be permanent.
Yeah.
Right.
We're thinking somewhere between 3 to 5 years,
Yeah,
maybe
they're-
less.
They're in the process of doing
Yeah.
some design work now, and, that takes a while, and then there's funding, and then there's move out, so it could vary.
Looks like Mr. Torres is coming up.
Al Torres, Construction Management. We are currently working on the plans. We're hoping to start construction probably April or May.
Okay.
And we're hoping for like a 9-month construction time. We'll know a little bit more as we get closer, but.
And that's to
what we're looking at.
improve this
That's to
location?
improve, no, that's to improve the existing animal shelter.
Okay.
And while that's being done, we need a place to house the
Sure.
animals, the dogs. So I have not gotten involved in the remodel of this shelter, although I'm sure that they'll
There may be,
approach
yeah,
me
there
with
may
that,
be
but-
some work there,
Yeah.
so
The
5
goal
years,
is-
But
the
it's
goal is
just a
pretty
temporary.
quick, but,
Sure.
Yeah.
give them a little leeway.
so
Right.
5 years?
That's plenty.
Should be reasonable?
I would think so.
Yeah,
If
just
they
in-
need
just in
longer,
case.
they can come back to you.
Okay. All right. Anyone else have thoughts or want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve as presented, putting a limitation on timeframe, when the city is done with this building, that it, in whatever timeframe we're going to specify. Do I actually have to specify this?
I don't know. Maybe that's the way to do it.
When the city is done with this building, let's say within, the next occupant it would automatically revert back to existing zoning.
General commercial.
General commercial?
Yes.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve as presented. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? 6-0. I did shut the heat off, thankfully. Okay, next item is Z 2318 and CP 2306, a request to rezone from commercial or office commercial zoning district to single-family zoning, RS1, allowing single-family on 11 acres southwest of the intersection of Smith and Gregory.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sherry Bailey again. This is a request for both a comprehensive plan amendment and a rezoning to go from actually office commercial to the single-family residential. In this 11 acres right here, above there, and we'll go over it in just a minute, there is residential. We have residential of 3 different types in this area, but this large area along Houston Hart with the office commercial was anticipated that some kind of commercial would be developed there. But in looking at the use for the area and the larger picture, we think that this is also something that fits in with that general area. It is in SMD number 4, Lucy Gonzalez's district, and it is in the Paul Ann neighborhood. When you're looking at the existing zoning map, as you can see, we've got RS3 to the north. We have RM1 to kind of the northeast. Then there's general commercial, and a heavier commercial just past this. And then this is the large area of office commercial. And I think originally it was intended to be kind of a holding pattern. In reading back at some actions that occurred, a holding pattern because they really didn't know what kind of commercial, but they wanted to encourage some kind of mix that would provide jobs for people in that general area. The proposed area is 11 acres, and it's to become RS1, which is the one residential type that is missing in this large area. We've got multifamily, we have RS3, but we don't have single residential. We think that mix is a good thing to happen in a neighborhood where there's so much development and growth potential. We sent out 13 notices. We received 0 in support and 0 in opposition. And in looking at the rationale on this, the request is to change the land use from commercial to neighborhood on just those 11 acres. It still leaves a very large area that remains that commercial use. As I indicated before, there is presently both the RS3 and the RM1, which is adjacent to this. So this is a good mix, and particularly for residents that are using this as a starter home or coming out into an area that has had a lot of development in the past. And it's kind of an exciting, vibrant idea to have all of those uses so close together. The overall plan, we feel, is compatible with the city's comprehensive plan with that amendment that we are suggesting. We believe the proposed plans are also consistent with the city's zoning ordinance, and staff believes that this plan encourages concept of that's supposed to be mixed-use area that benefits the flexibility of different types of uses, both commercial and residential. And this area is just starting to develop or getting going, and so it is in a changing state, which contributes to the vitality of the area. We do not believe that there will be a substantial effect on the natural environment. This area of the city is just starting to develop, as I said, and so families looking to have a choice of housing within that area, we think this is a good mix, and this housing element was the one type missing in the area, as I mentioned before. And so staff is recommending approval of the comprehensive plan amendment, CP 2306, from commercial to neighborhood, and approval of the rezoning from office commercial to single-family residence, which is Z2318 RS1 for the property located at the southwest corner of Smith Boulevard and Gregory Drive. And with that, are there any questions?
Anyone have questions for the staff? All right, we're going to open it up for public comment. Anyone wish to speak on this, please come forward.
Hi, I'm Gary Cortese. I'm the landowner, that would be north 42 acres, and I did not send my form in because I forgot. I do not oppose what they're proposing, and as a matter of fact, I've offered them to, if they future development, my 42 acres will help with the design phase and everything. I'm open to it. I have a preliminary plat on the 42 acres already, and I could, if it all worked out, vacate it. There's some, Ricks Drive is north of me there. It's a bar ditch city maintains. There's some drainage issues there for, we can all work together, maybe get a regional type detention and for the area, and that's going to create getting TxDOT involved, the city involved, and the landowners involved. But it would be interesting journey, of course, to see if we could pull that off, make it work for the whole Pauline area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cortese. Anyone else wish to speak on this?
Hello, I'm Austin Aguero, Sierra Vista Construction, here representing the landowner developer for the 11 acres in question. We're just seeking approval to rezone. We're just getting started in the process. We're open to many things, such as coordinating with the adjacent landowners to make everything work in a way the city would approve. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Mr. Aguero. Anyone else wish to speak on this case? All right, I'm going to close public comment. It looks like we're only addressing the zoning, and I think the zoning proposed makes a lot of sense for this area.
And the comprehensive
And the
plan
change to the
amendment.
comprehensive plan. Yes, ma'am. The frontage on Houston Hart, it looks like has been retained for commercial development, maybe in the future. So I think this makes sense personally. Anyone else want to share their thoughts or make a motion?
Is presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 6-0. Z2319 and CP2305, a request to rezone from CGCH to RM1, which is low-rise multifamily residential, a property at 1621 North Chadbourn Street, and a comprehensive plan amendment to rezone from commercial to neighborhood commercial center or neighborhood center for the property at 1621 and 1705 North Chadbourn, and 22, 21, 18, 17, 15 West 17th Street, and 22, 18, 16, and 6 West 16th Street. That's a mouthful.
Yes, sir. Good morning again. Aaron Benoit, Assistant Director of Planning and Development Services. All those addresses will come into focus in just a moment, but this is, the rezoning is this lot that's in red outline right here, which is .482 acres. They are looking to go to RM1, low-rise multifamily. That is a house that has been functioning as some apartments, and they would like to expand the apartments. The RM1 zoning would actually be for the entire lot. And if you see this side and even here, there is the potential thought of maybe subdividing and adding a couple of more structures there that would fit still within the RM1 zoning as kind of single-family residential structures that would fit on there, and the subdivision would actually allow it based on the size. So it is a little deceiving, but the lot is actually bigger than what you think, and it would allow that in the future. We are going to do a comprehensive plan change from the commercial, which this is on the Chadbourn corridor where a lot of the areas are commercial, but this is one area that it kind of restricts down and there's more residential in the area. So we are going to go to that neighborhood center that would allow that mix. This is in SMD4, Lucy Gonzalez, and in the Reagan neighborhood. So here on the left, if you see the properties outlined in black, you can see that square of commercial. So on the west side of North Chadbourn, we are proposing to move that to neighborhood center, which would match the areas north and south. On the right side, the eastern side of North Chadbourn, based on some of the properties uses that are there now, we're not proposing to change that. We're going to leave it commercial because some of those commercial uses are already there and are functioning that way, so we didn't want to do that. But on this side, you've got a number of single-family residences, particularly on this block. There's this is a single-family property, but it's not being used as single-family. It's kind of vacant right now, and this property is single-family. This property right here is a commercial business, but it would actually fit under the neighborhood commercial vision plan or the comprehensive plan, and the overlying zoning is still going to be this general commercial, heavy commercial for those pieces that are outside. So if you kind of shift your focus now over to the other side where there's CGCH, the only property that will change is that property there that has the multifamily currently. That would go to the RM1. These properties here at the bottom and at the top would stay the CGCH at this time. And these that we're proposing on the comp plan would stay with this RS1 residential over here, and they would true be RS1 residential and have some protections that way. Get all those arrows off there. So we did send out 43 notifications. We did have 2 in support. This, I believe, is a church over here on the top right, a property owner there on 17th, and then the property directly across. Their opposition was mainly that this structure here is a historic structure. It does have a historic overlay. That's what they were concerned about, but we actually have through controls through our Design and Historic Review Commission as far as the aesthetics of what it would look like. We are working with the applicant to make sure they understand what that means and how that would move forward, which is completely separate from this land use zoning that we're doing today and the comprehensive plan that we're doing today. Looked at the rationale. We did look at the comprehensive plan that identifies this area as commercial. These properties really haven't built out that way, and there's still significant single-family houses that are there, and so we wanted to kind of preserve those single-family houses in that little part of the corridor because they actually do have some services as neighborhood center in the area, and that's kind of what it's about, is getting neighborhoods closer to those areas so they're not having to travel as far. This is a historic building on the property that's been converted to some apartments in the past, and it would better fit with lesser intensity as neighborhood center as opposed to maybe higher commercial or heavy commercial in the future. The surrounding area, as noted above, the properties there are mixed use, but most of those uses are small, minor commercial, not heavy commercial, and so we're trying to preserve that thought through that neighborhood center proposal, still allowing the zoning to stay commercial and heavy commercial, and then this single property being moved to the RM1 low-rise multifamily. Here's some of the site photos from across the street. You can see there's the house structure there on the right. You can see the alleyway that goes between them and the properties on the south. This picture on the right is actually standing there in that alleyway and kind of in the current parking looking across the street. And you can see there's a couple of little commercial structures that have been used over the years with different low-intensity commercial uses that have happened in that area. Again, this is now from a side view from, I believe that's 16th, that's looking north. You can see the property there. There's a large vacant property there that could develop into some kind of commercial in the future. But again, the structure there would be the RM1 low-rise. So with that, the staff recommends approval of the comprehensive plan change from commercial to neighborhood commercial or neighborhood center located at all those addresses around that would be on the western side of Chadbourn. And then recommendation of approval to rezone from general commercial, heavy commercial to the RM1 low-rise multifamily located at 1621 North Chadbourn. With that, are there any questions?
The vacant lot?
Yes, ma'am?
The vacant lot, is that part of the 4-something acres that you were talking about with the?
No, ma'am.
Okay, good, okay.
No, ma'am. It would stay as it is. This lot here is at .482 acres, so not quite a half an
0.4.
acre there.
I see, okay.
But yes, it would stay the way it is.
Does neighborhood center allow for single-family development?
Yes, it does.
And use?
It does. It is a mix of low-intensity uses. Now,
Yep.
some can be some of these low-rise apartment style, and that's kind of what this house is converted to over the years. And I think the applicant has some ideas to utilize that. I mean, they're close to the downtown, they're close to Shannon, and so there's some possibilities there that they have some ideas of how to utilize it.
Okay.
So is there need for the use of that historical house that's on there, that large home? They're not tearing it down, is that, am I understanding that right there?
That is correct.
Yeah.
That is correct. Since it does have that historic overlay, they would have to go to the Design and Historic Review Commission
Right.
to request that of any kind of demolition, and then ultimately to City Council. because then they would actually act as the planning commission at that time because it's got the historic overlay, and they would go to city council for that. And at this time, that's not the idea. They want to reutilize the building there and create a few more extra apartments in the building.
So since the home had, microphone doesn't like me. Since the home has a historic overlay, is that on the structure itself or is that on the lot? Like, will
That's
it
the
impact-
entire .482 lot.
Okay, so they still have to go to the historic committee in order to get their plans reviewed?
Yes, that is correct.
And then what percentage of lot coverage are they allowed to have? Do you know?
I want to say for RM1, it's either .6 or .7, but it's a pretty large number. It does depend on if they choose a single-family structure or a multifamily or a duplex, but I would have to look back to be, but the multifamily is actually a pretty large number.
Thanks, Aaron.
All right, I'm going to open it up. Can you hear me now? I'm going to open it up for public comment. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Glenda Bailey, no relation. I oppose this because, one, it is a historical site.
A little bit closer to you so they can catch it. I'm sorry.
And if you don't mind, state your name and either address or single-member district.
Okay,
Please.
my name is Glenda Bailey, no relation, and I'm representing my mother. She lives in the area.
Okay.
Okay. I oppose this. One, this home is a historical site. They've already demolished, without permission, part of it, knowing that they were not allowed to. They demolished the coach quarters or the maid quarters, whatever you want to call it. This building has not been used in several years. It doesn't have utilities at all. So, I mean, the new owner that came in and bought it, I'm sure he's well aware of that. It's just not right.
So
Okay.
is your objection to the owner and the actions that they've taken or to
No,
the
my
proposed
objection.
use?
No, it's for the use. What are they putting in there? Supposedly apartments?
Yes, it would be some sort of residential use.
Yes, it's been listed as 4 apartments in the past. They're looking at expanding the number of
And
apartments.
how long ago was these 4 apartments?
I don't know. That's just what we have on record.
Right.
But I don't know that.
But I know for a fact there has not been utilities there forever.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Multifamily, what kind of multifamily?
Right.
I mean,
Well, what the staff has introduced to us, I guess, would be, number one, that because it's a historical structure, whatever's done on that property would have to be approved by a different commission, a historical preservation
Right.
commission. Number two, because the building has a historic designation, for any work to be done on that site, we'd have to have someone else approve it. They're not gonna, I wouldn't expect that they would allow them to tear the building down.
they didn't allow it, they just did it.
Right.
So what do they do with that? I mean, that kind of depreciates the historical part of it.
I don't know. That's a good question.
Well, staff became aware of that Friday, and so our building official did go out and confirm that there's been a structure taken down. And so the staff's next step, which is aside from this rezoning, is to work with the applicant to let them know that they must rebuild it exactly how it was, or get permission to remove. Again, city staff further down the road would not support removal of any structures that are historic on that
Right.
property. But that is an enforcement issue, and we'll be working through that as we need to with the applicant.
Okay. And there is an underground tunnel under the basement of that home that goes to the fallout shelter at the city hall. I don't know if anybody's done their work or not.
Wow. At
when-
City Hall.
Yes, when they had the fallout shelter built at the
Yes,
city
ma'am.
hall, like from Central, the Sears building, from that home, because the mayor lived in that house. And
That's
that
a
was-
long distance.
Yes, and that was his protection, I guess that's what you would call it.
Okay.
So I just wondered, what are they going to do about that?
Great question. Not really under our review or consideration. The zoning clearly, and the potential redevelopment and use of the lot based on the zoning would be
Right.
what we're considering right now.
Right, well, have they said what kind of apartments they're going to have there? I mean, you can have rehab apartments, you can have low-income apartments.
Yeah, we haven't seen any of that. All we're looking at right now is zoning that would allow them to have apartments on the property.
Right,
So, as the staff has indicated, there were 4 units in that structure at some point in the past. I'm assuming that the expectation would be something similar, with maybe the possibility of adding some sort of accessory structure that would be lower density, probably because of the coverage of the lot, as Brittany mentioned earlier, allowed by the zoning. But it would be a multifamily use.
okay, but if you're making an income, would that not be commercial?
Yes, multifamily is commercial.
Right.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
why wouldn't it
But it's a
stay-
residential use of sorts. It's not an office or
Right, but all-
retail or,
All the apartment complexes in town are residential, and they're all commercial.
yes, ma'am, they have the same RM designation. There's different intensities of multifamily residential zoning. This would be the lowest density there's a high-rise multifamily designation for zoning that's not part of this discussion, but
right.
that some of the properties in town have.
So you can't really say if it's going to be a rehab center or if it's just going to be apartments to rent, or what
No,
are they
ma'am.
bringing into the neighborhood, because you have no idea.
No, and we really don't have the authority to dictate that,
The
given
the
where we
indication
are.
from the applicant was that they would be apartments for rent, that there would not be another facility type other than apartments for rent at this time. He may do some short-term rentals, but then depending on the zoning classification, he may have to get a conditional use for that, or he may be allowed by right. It just depends in the future when he's ready to do that aspect of his property.
Okay.
Okay.
I had one other question, and there's a metal or a tin fence in the alleyway
Okay.
that has a very bad slogan on it. I think it needs to be removed, and it says, "God is greed." And I
Okay.
just don't think that's right.
We're going to be working with code enforcement to see if there's any violations there,
Yeah.
and then they can review that and look at that.
Thanks, Eric.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, anyone else wish to speak on this case?
Is the applicant here by chance? Or somebody representing the applicant?
Good morning.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Chris Bravo, and I am assisting with the rebuilding of this property. And unfortunately, when they were trimming one of the trees next to the back housing, the little house at the back, it did fall on the house, on the little efficiency apartment that's in the back, and it did come down a little bit. So because we have a lot of traffic with homeless people in that area, I've had a lot of issues with them, and I didn't want it to completely fall on them, so we had to take it down a little, and it accidentally, it completely came down. So, I mean, we will pay the fines for whatever that is, or if we need to rebuild it, obviously we will. But other than that, we're just gonna, keep it at a 4-apartment complex for the historical home. We want to keep it as it is and try to make it a better place. And what we are planning to do with it is, because there's a lot of demand for professional nursing facilities for traveling nurses.
Yes,
That's
ma'am.
what we're planning to use it for. Okay? So if anybody has any questions, they can ask me.
Okay. Anyone have questions for the applicant?
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. All right, anyone else wish to speak on this case? We're going to close public comment. This, given the location on Chadburn Street and the underlying uses and the reduction in intensity, I think this zoning request seems reasonable personally. But I'll take anyone else's thoughts or emotion.
I'll make a motion to approve as is.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 6-0. All right, Z2320, a request to rezone the property at 926 Humble Road from light manufacturing to general commercial.
Thank you, Austin Reed, planning technician. This is up off of North Bryant, kind of going out of town. 7.39 acres, Tom Thompson's district in the Riverside neighborhood. The request is to go from light manufacturing to general commercial. Mailed out 13 notices. We didn't receive any responses. Looking at the surrounding zones, we have ranch and estate, heavy commercial, and light manufacturing. If you'll see there at the bottom where it says general commercial, that's actually heavy commercial. That was rezoned, I believe, a couple months ago for an equipment rental business. The vision plan is commercial. Pretty much everything up and down North Bryant there is commercial, so that's important to keep in mind. Looking at the evaluation of appropriateness, this request is consistent with the comprehensive plan, of course, as I just mentioned, the zoning ordinance, and the surrounding area. There's no environmental effects. It meets the community needs for the area. There's residential nearby that this would serve to benefit, and this follows a logical and orderly pattern of development. This is along a busy highway, and it's yet to be developed, so it's welcomed into commercial. With that, staff recommends approval of a rezoning, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have questions for the staff? Thank you, Austin.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Thank you.
I open it up for public comment. Anyone wish to speak on this case? I'm going to close public comment. This is on Bryant. It's a major thoroughfare, and I think the rezoning to commercial is good. It's a gateway into our community, and I think it'd be better to have commercial than manufacturing personally. Anyone else want to share thoughts or make a motion?
Make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve as presented. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? 6-0. Is everyone okay, or you all want to take a 5-minute break? We're going to take a 5-minute break. It's 11:07. Okay, folks, it's 11:15. We're going to get back to it. The next case is Z2321. It's a request to expand the open structure overlay map to include the following area of Angelo Heights neighborhood. The 1,000, 3,000, and 4,000 blocks of Catalina Drive, 2,000 and 3,000 blocks of Nueces Drive, 1,000 block of Luis Drive, and 1,000 block of Cordell Drive, 2,700 block of Eunice Drive, and 2,700 block of Erline. Mr. Vinoy.
Yes, sir. This is the Z2321 open structure map extension, like you said, to the Angelo Heights area. Again, my name is Aaron Vinoy, Assistant Director, Planning and Development Services. This is in SMD number 2, Tom Thompson, and again, that neighborhood is Angelo Heights. So it may be very hard to see on everyone's screen, but this is the image that in purple that shows where the current overlay district is. This is just a map extension to an area right up here just south of O.C. Fisher Lake and the dam structure there, and north of Edmond Drive. This is no change to the text or how we look at open structures in that area. Is just simply a map extension to allow some the carports or the open structures in that area. So here's a little bit more of a zoomed in area. Again, this is Edmond right along here. This is the neighborhood that we're looking at. And you can see with the pinpoints, those are areas that already have an open structure that is not allowed in our zoning ordinance. So what we're doing here is extending this map to the north, to that neighborhood. It would allow those structures, maybe not how they're currently built, but it would allow them to have this structure in some form. And we will be dealing with those individual properties in the future. If they're not allowed to have the structure, that means it really should be coming down. They don't have that ability to have that. So this is an area that, after looking at by staff, we do believe that this is an area to expand that into. We did send out 231 notices that were mailed out. We did have 2 in support. You can see where those were located at, and then 1 in opposition that's back here by the river. The 1 in opposition, their concern was that this might allow the properties to look a little less sightly, that they may have some conditions that may not be what they wanted when they maybe bought their property. And we certainly understand their concerns. That is also why the ordinance has specific design guidelines for our open structures. And I think that they have seen those structures that have not come into compliance in the neighborhood, and I think that's their concern. So the rationale, this would change the front setbacks for the open structures in that area. They would be within 5 feet of the property lines. Most of the streets back there already have a 5-foot right-of-way, and then you add the 5 feet, so that's really 10 feet off of the curb, which is fairly reasonable, and you saw that large area of our town that has that. Now, we did an evaluation of a lot of those homes. A lot of the homes were built from 1969 up into the 80s. Now, over the last probably 2 decades, there's been some redevelopment, late 90s, early 2000s. The most recent house that we could find was 2006. Most of those homes that have been in the last 2 decades have dual garages. Some of the older homes only have 1 single garage. And that was kind of the reason that the open structure overlay came into existence, is for those properties that didn't have protection for those vehicles, is let's allow a carport that matches the home to be built on in front of the home so that they can protect their private property. The comprehensive plan shows this as neighborhood. This open structure would not change that designation. It would not change the RS1 zoning. It would simply allow an open structure to be built on the property. So here are a couple of site photos. If you see this first photo, that would be one that would be conforming to the full open structure overlay. This actually has the correct setbacks, and it has the right kind of gable pitch that matches the house. If you look at the one on the right, while it looks like it may have the right setbacks, it is just a flat-roofed carport, and it probably doesn't quite meet the pitch of the roof that we look for. A lot of times we also, if you notice the one on the right, you can't really see it in this picture, but it also has the shingles that match the house. The one on the right, it's just a metal-topped roof. Now, there's an option. The Zoning Board of Adjustment could give a variance since it's already existing, but that's the process they would go through. If our property owners have the open structure, come to us when they come to the front desk in our building department to talk about a carport. They bring over a planner. They start discussing design. How does this need to match the house so that it kind of blends in? And I think that's the concern that we have from anybody in the neighborhood. So with that, the staff is recommending approval of the extension of the open structure overlay map to the Angelo Heights neighborhood. It would be the 1,000, 3,000, and 4,000 blocks of Catalina Drive, the 2,000 and 3,000 blocks of Nueces Drive, the 1,000 blocks of Louise Drive, the 1,000 block of Cordell Drive, and the 2,700 block of Eunice Drive, and the 2,700 block of Erline Drive. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have questions for the staff?
In your two scenarios, looking back over, will this one on the right be required after this passes to redo or make changes, or are they grandfathered with this date?
That's a good question. We would not consider them grandfathered at this time. We would visit with them to see if they needed to go forward to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. They currently don't have a building permit either for any of those structures out there, and so there's really a couple of things to resolve there. But they could go to the Zoning Board of Adjustment and they could legalize the structure in the way it is, as is. That would be kind of for their board to make that decision, and then we could at least get it maybe legalized and on the map and go from there.
Thank you.
I just want to clarify or make sure I fully understand. Currently, carports are not allowed, right?
They're not allowed in this front yard setback like these that have been constructed.
But what this would do, this overlay expansion would do, is to allow them, and just with the application of the ordinance as it is everywhere else where the overlay exists currently.
That is correct.
Okay.
Aaron, do you mind going back to the larger overview? Is that the largest that you've got? That one's good.
Okay.
So this looks like a pocket that was just not included in the original overlay.
May not have been developed at all.
How long is the open structures overlay?
About
been?
2003 is what we've been able to research. Sherry Bailey and I have actually looked back trying to figure out why this area would maybe excluded or why other areas were, and there really is not a lot of dialogue in the notes that were kept to see why.
Yeah.
And it's possibly as
That
Candy
developed
said,
late,
is that-
that developed later, everything off of Edmond toward O.C. Fisher was a development as it started, probably back in the, I would say, early 80s, maybe the very late 70s, but in the early 80s. So it's possible that nothing was being done over there, so.
Yeah, particularly on Catalina, there were some houses in the late 60s, 70s, and
Yeah,
early
on
80s.
around.
But then as that in the middle of that started developing out, that was in the late 90s and early 2000s. And in fact, even on Cordell Drive, I mean, there was one that was in 2006 that was built.
Okay.
As far as the home itself.
Yes.
And so now they've been there 20 years or so, and people have decided, well, there's some of these that need carports to protect their private property.
Sure. Okay. Anyone else have questions for the staff? I'm going to open it up for public comment. Anyone wish to speak on this case, please come forward. Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment and take thoughts or a motion, please.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 6-0. Conditional uses, the Planning Commission has final authority for approval of conditional uses. Appeals may be directed to the City Council. CU 2355, a request for approval of a conditional use to allow short-term rental located at 3013 Red Bluff Circle in a RS1 zoning district.
Good morning again. Aaron Vanoy, Assistant Director of Planning Development Services. This is a request 23-55 for 3013 Red Bluff Circle. It's a request for approval of a conditional use for a short-term rental. It is in RS1 single-family residential zoning in SMD1 Tommy Hebert and in the Lake Nasworthy neighborhood. So here's our STRs in the Nasworthy neighborhood. You can see the current request I'm just going to kind of circle around there. It's right in there off of that peninsula. You can see there is one that's approved and then one that was denied approximately a year ago back off of Red Bluff Ramp Road maybe, or maybe Circle. You can see all the others that are approved. Obviously, Lake Nasworthy is a neighborhood that short-term rentals tend to come and go because of the lake, and there's lots of uses out at the lake. And so we think about that when we're trying to make our decisions and recommendations to the Planning Commission. We did notify 14 mail-outs. We had 3 in favor, and they are very close to the actual property. We did have 1 against. That was a property that was against another short-term rental, and they are opposed to all short-term rentals, but they are opposed to this one as well, and it's at that property right down there. With that, the staff does recommend approval of this short-term rental at 3013 Red Bluff Circle, subject to the 3 normal conditions that we have, and that they maintain their compliance with Section 406 of the zoning ordinance. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Pave and maintain or maintain 2 off-street parking spaces on the premise. Do you know if
they
currently meet that requirement?
They do have, and I thought I had an image in here, but they do have a 3-car garage and they do have paving. Let me see if I can get to, you can see right here, this area, that is their 3-car garage, and they actually have paving all the way through here, and it is actually concrete all the way out to Red Bluff Circle.
Okay.
I apologize. I know I had an image of that in the report. I thought I put one on our slideshow, but apparently I did not.
All right. Anyone else have questions?
So there's only one approved in Nasworthy area close to this Red Bluff address. Is it that one more image back, if you don't mind? Yes. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. That green star represents one that is also on that peninsula, also on Red Bluff Circle. This case did go to the ZBA and receive the 3013 Red Bluff Circle, did go to ZBA and request a distance variance and did receive a distance variance.
Could you go back to the tighter?
Yeah.
So that is this property right here that has a current short-term rental.
I thought the ZBA was not gonna change the distances any longer. Am I incorrect in that thought?
Yeah.
Well, they had the ability to do that. They chose to do that in this one. This applicant did come to the city in September 2022 and applied. For unknown reasons, that application did not get processed. The applicant came back in September 2023 and asked how to renew. Since then, they've been working with city staff, going in front of the Zoning Board of Adjustment to find out how to become compliant. And the Zoning Board of Adjustment took that into consideration and did grant a distance variance at that time.
Okay, so they already are operating, essentially?
That is correct.
Because they thought they were...
That is correct. And they have provided their information to get with the finance department to come up into compliance with their local hot taxes. They have been paying state hot taxes, but not the local hot taxes, and they're working with them to come into compliance with that.
What was the variance?
The variance was a distance variance. Those 2 properties by property lines are just under 200 feet apart from these closest property lines up here.
Okay. Anyone else have questions for the staff? I'm going to open it up for public comment. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Kelly Nelson. I take care of this property for some friends of ours. I don't know if y'all, what questions I can answer.
You want to have questions for the applicant? So the application for the short-term rental was sent in,
Yes, in September of 2022.
okay, but it was not approved.
It was not processed.
It was not processed,
No.
okay?
And so in 2023, I realized, hey, we need to renew. What do I need to do? And that's when it was determined that we didn't have one. So we're not business people. We've never done this before. And so we just thought it was good.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else have questions for the applicant? Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this case? I'm going to close public comment and take thoughts or emotion.
It was sent in, it just wasn't processed.
Yes, we do have email communication that
Okay.
they did send it in. There's email communication from staff saying this is how you need to pay, and from there, we don't have any other communication back and forth from anyone. In fact, one of our emails, the last one, says that the city would reach back out to you. It's unknown if that happened or not. They did reach out again in September, and that's when our staff realized that there had just been one approved, I believe, in either July or August of 2023, the one that's on the peninsula as well, and that posed a problem for them.
And also, just to clarify, I think on payment, they claim they sent it in, but the city never deposited any checks, so we don't have a record.
Okay?
Well, I'm not gonna lie, I don't love that, the ZBA can overrule
Yeah.
some of these, but at the same point in time, if the owner had come into compliance with the city and it really is an unknown fact on where the discrepancy occurred, I will make a motion to approve as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay. We have a motion and a second on the floor to approve as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. 5-1. All right. CU 2358, request for approval of a conditional use to allow short-term rental located at 1305 South Jackson.
Good morning. I'm going to close the show with these last four. Ray Lineberry, planner. So this one is 1305 South Jackson. You may recognize it as it was in front of you a few months ago. The circumstances have changed. The one that was within 500 feet of them is no longer there. They do no longer have a conditional use or are operating. So this is a request for a short-term rental, single-family residential, District 5, Santa Rita neighborhood. And you see it does have parking that is paved. This is the STRs in the Santa Rita area. The current one is in the yellow. And I tried to, you guys had asked to see the difference between the denied and expired. I did not change the color though, but I let you know that there was 3 denied out of those 8. And then we do have 2 that have their CO and they're good to go. They're in the green, and 4 that have a CU, but they have not finished the process. We mailed out 26 notices. We received 3 in favor and 0 in opposition. And so staff is recommending approval for them to maintain their off-street parking, receive a certificate of occupancy, and their annual fire inspection. With that, is there any questions on this one?
Anyone have questions for the staff? All right, thank you, Ray. I open it up for public comment. Good morning.
My name is Michaela Gorman. I am from Lubbock, actually. The owner of the house is my cousin, and I manage all of his short-term rental properties. Back in July, before we bought the house, I looked on the interactive map on the city, and there was no short-term rental properties on the map. And then I called the city just to make sure, and they said, we're good. And then when I submitted the application, they came back and said, no, there is a short-term rental property like within 500 feet. So we took it to ZBA, I think is what it's called. And we got approved for the variance, I guess the distance variance. And then it went back to planning, I think, and was denied. And so now we're here. Anyways, we've been dealing with this since July. So yeah, and if y'all have any questions.
Do you have questions for the applicant?
Oh, good.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Great, so there's no longer a distance variance because the other one is,
no longer operating.
Okay.
The one on Avenue I, not only did they expire in December and did not come forward for renewal, they also emailed and said they will no longer be short-term rental, that they had a 6-month lease going.
Okay,
so nothing within that 500 feet for this one?
Nothing.
Okay, thank you.
thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this case? I'm going to close public comment and take thoughts or a motion.
I know there was a lot of confusion on this one with the hidden property, this one and one that was not too far from it. And I mean, the applicant's been trying their best to get it approved, so I'm going to make a motion to approve as presented.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve as presented. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? 6-0. Conditional use 2360, CU 2360. Request for approval of a conditional use to allow short-term rental located at 1219 South David Street.
Ray Lineberry again, planner. This one is on David Street, and it is a request for a short-term rental. It is an RS2, District 5, Santa Rita neighborhood. And you can also see they do have paved parking. This is the STRs in Santa Rita again. Everything is the same except for I added the yellow star of where they are. This time they are over here. Yeah. And we mailed out 20 notices. The one in opposition is not labeled on the map because we found out, let me see, it was, I believe it, oh, this one down here. So it was, the one in your packet says 1301 down there. That was the previous owner that sold the property last September. And so the new owner did not receive a notice, and the previous owner no longer lives there, but he sent in an opposition. So he's technically not in the notification area. But we did receive one in opposition.
Interesting.
A duplex, one side is going to be STR and the other is either owner occupant or normal.
The conditional use is for the lot, so either one could be
Okay.
short-term rental,
Or both.
or both.
Okay.
So staff is recommending approval as long as they maintain their parking, obtain a certificate of occupancy, and obtain the final annual fire inspection. Is
You know,
that-
one thing on the ordinance, I don't know that we, it's addressed, is about duplexes, multifamily, being STRs.
That's the first time that's occurred to me.
So is that covered, that something like this could be be an STR?
Yes, so it was discussed previously when we first brought the ordinance amendments to you guys. We mentioned we had one already come forward that was a duplex. You actually could probably see it in, nope, you can't see it because it doesn't zoom in. Anyways, there is another one in Santa Rita that is a duplex that came forward and received a conditional use. The conditional use has always been for the lot, not for a specific house. There's also one on Avenue B that has a garage apartment and a house, and they received a conditional use, and it's for both or either. With it being the new STR amendment, doing RS1, 2, and 3, that encompasses duplexes, townhomes. So it would be for either side, either location.
So on that note, is the requirement for off-street parking 2 per unit?
It is 1.5 per unit, which staff rounds up to 2. So yes, the one on Avenue B had to put in 2 more parking spots for
Okay.
their garage apartment.
All right.
And so really the underlying zoning controls, so if you think about RS1, you can only have one primary structure.
Yes.
RS2 allows 2 people to live there, and RS3 allows 3, if you will, or 0 lot line and twin homes. And that's kind of that dividing of, those are true traditional neighborhood residential uses, and then that RM and RM1 and RM2, we start looking at those as commercial and that. So that's kind of where we make the break. Now, the conditional use, if you saw there were 2 structures and you only wanted 1, there may be a potential that you add that as a condition, as a discretionary thing. Usually with a duplex, you already have some transient coming and going, obviously not short-term because that's less than 30 days and maybe there's long-term leases there. But it gives that property owner maybe the flexibility to choose what they want to do.
All right, anyone else have questions for the staff? Haven't opened this up for public comment yet, I don't think, so I'm going to do that now. Open it up for public comment.
Hello, my name is Rachel Ramirez, and I just wanted to give y'all a little bit of clarification. So it's not a duplex. What you're seeing at the very far end, it is what was a carport. And at this time, my grandpa decided for some reason he wanted to enclose it. And so it is a very enormous back room with a restroom and plus potentially like a small office as well. This home has 3 bedrooms and 3 baths. It is over 2,400 square foot. It is enormous. We've used it for college girls. They have their own restroom. They have their own, everybody can just kind of just designate how they want to live.
Sure.
But I just wanted to clarify that back portion is not a duplex. The roof is lower. However, there are beams. Everything is, we can pass city ordinance. So be glad to make all the requirements needed. But I'm just hoping for your approval today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to make sure that I understand, if you don't mind. It's not a duplex, and I was wondering where the other door was, but.
So there are many doors. Okay, so we have the front door. I'm sorry, I don't know how to work this thing, but right here, if you're looking towards the driveway, you see the bushes. Right there, there's another door. On the other side of, if you're looking towards your left-hand side, there's another door, which we're thinking about closing that off because there's, like I said, there's multiple doors. There's 4 doors on the exterior of that home. You have one on that enclosed garage that leads straight to the backyard, and then one on the side. That's why I'm saying, like, whenever we did the whole rental thing, all these girls were able to get in at their own time, have their own keys. They would just lock different doors and nobody ever woke anybody up. They kind of just shared their kitchen and their laundry room. So it's a very big home. It has multiple potential. We wouldn't have any issues with crowding. I think it would just do really good for the community with the Airbnbs and short-term rentals.
So your potential use is for one set of people, not
Correct.
splitting the house in 2.
This home can easily fit 8 to 12 people, easily.
But you're not using it as a duplex to have
No,
2
ma'am. No,
rental
ma'am. No,
sites.
we've never used it as a duplex. It's always the girls, it's always been college girls, and they all know each other. And, you know, we've had the ones who are more party ones, and so we got rid of that. And then we have great girls who were there, and they graduated from college, and now this opportunity has came up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else wish to speak on this?
My name is Rose Villegas.
Good morning.
I'm at 1215 South David Street. I'm the neighbor,
Yes, ma'am.
and I oppose it.
Okay.
If you can look, there's police reports because there's been issues with the parties way into the night. There's been a lot of issues. They damaged the fence. They dumped trash in my driveway in the back of my house. I asked them to help me tow it away. They didn't. I totally oppose it. There's just no way.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else have questions for Rose? Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to say that the neighbor did call and reference police reports, so I did put in a request for one, and I have not heard back, so that is not confirmed or anything.
On this one too, Ray, since you had in the presentation, two, we need to change that?
Isn't David, part of David zoned RS2?
It's just the underlying zoning.
Oh, okay, all right. Not
It has
for
a
this
single-
one specific.
Right, it has a single-family structure on it, but it's zoned RS2.
Got it.
Okay, anyone else wish to speak on this case? We're going to close public comment and take thoughts or emotion. The comments from the neighbor about the issues in the past are, I think, worth considering or at least discussing.
Can I say one word?
Yes, ma'am, I'm going to open it up, open public comment so that you can speak. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry about that, Rachel Ramirez again. I am aware of the situations and what the neighbor is saying. She is 100% correct. At this time, the police officers would not do anything. They were called multiple times out. Some of their parties happened. This was we're talking about 2 years, more than 2 years ago, because the past previous girls that I've had have been with me for over 2 years, and not one. If you Ray, whenever you get that police report, please notice that not one call was made for the police. These girls have been amazing. Like I said, you have good tenants, and then you have some that you think they're going to be great, and they just kind of rock your world, and you can't break a lease for that. If the police will not do anything, there's nothing I can do.
Right.
So I just ask God to please be considering that those police reports happened over 2 years ago.
And these were for normal, longer than 30-day rentals, correct?
Right, yes, sir,
Okay,
for a
no
one-year
short-term
lease.
rental.
They were there for 1 year, and I did not approve them to come back. So I did take that into consideration.
Will you be the manager of record for this property as well?
Yes, sir. I am the owner, and I will be the one to host everything.
Okay.
I have been the one to submit all documents.
Okay. And you've worked with Rose in the past?
We have discussed it, but sometimes I get where she's coming from, but as I can't do anything for police. If the police tells the tenants, you're fine, me as just a citizen of
Yeah,
San
you have
Angelo.
limitations.
Yes,
on your
sir.
property rights, I understand.
Yes, sir.
ma'am.
Thank you.
I think personally,
I'm going to close public comment now.
Yeah, I think personally this is one of the positives of the short-term versus the long-term. I mean, because in the long term, you signed a lease, you kind of limited to the actions that you can take. And I like the fact that she responded that it's been 2 years and it was cleaned up.
Yes. I agree. Does anyone want to make a motion?
Move to approve as presented.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 6-0. CU 2361, request for approval of a conditional use to allow short-term rental located at 206 North Bishop in a RS2 zoning district.
Ray Lineberry, planner, and I did want to make sure that it is said one more time that these conditional uses are good for a year. So they do have to come back for renewal, so there is the possibility that if it continues, an action can be taken.
Absolutely.
So this one is 206 North Bishop. It is RS2 District 5 in the central neighborhood, and it is looking for a short-term rental. This is the map for the central neighborhood. You can see the one in yellow, and then it technically only has one that finished the whole process and is good to go to operate. There are 3 others that have not finished the process. And then there is one that is expired. We mailed out 19 notices. We received 0 in favor, 0 in opposition. And so staff is recommending approval as long as they maintain their parking, obtain a certificate of occupancy, and obtain an annual fire inspection. With that, is there any questions?
Any questions for the staff? I'm going to open it up for public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on this one?
Hello again, Rachel Ramirez. If everybody is good, I would just like for y'all's permission. Again, this was a rental that we've had. No complaints, no police reports, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, great square footage, a little bit less than 2,000. Fenced backyard, we have the parking. And if all is well, I just hope y'all grant us permission. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this case? I'm going to close public comment and take thoughts or a motion, please.
Make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve as presented. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? 6-0. CU 2362, request for approval of a conditional use to allow short-term rental located at 1630 Catalina in RS1 zoning.
All right, Ray Lineberry Planner, this is it for today. So this is a short-term rental in RS1. It's District 2, Tom Thompson, the Angelo Heights neighborhood. This is the neighborhood map. You can see they're way up in the top corner, the yellow star. And we have one that is active and went through the complete process, and then we have 3 that have an approved CU but did not finish the process. We mailed out 22 notices. We received 3 in favor, 1 in opposition. The opposition didn't say anything. They just returned the bottom of the letter with the box checked. And then staff is recommending approval as long as they maintain the parking, obtain a certificate of occupancy, and get the annual fire inspection. Any questions on this one? And the applicant is here on this one also.
Okay. With no staff questions, I'm going to open it up for public comment.
I don't know what I'm supposed to say. I mean, I think she said it all. So, yeah, well, it's one of my properties that's a rental. I think it's, just what y'all said. This is a great case for getting people in there that are only in there for a short term to where you can get them out.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
if you have any questions.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else wish to speak on this one? All right, I'm going to close public comment and take thoughts or a motion.
Make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 6-0. Public comment, issues or concerns not on the regular agenda may be raised at this time. If you're interested in speaking, come up to the podium, address your comments to the dais, and please start by stating your name and address your single member district. Anyone wishing to speak in public comment? All right, I'm going to close public comment and go to the director's report. Points of concern from the city council discussion on short-term rentals.
Good morning again, Aaron Vanoy, Assistant Director of Planning and Development Services. So we want to just have a quick discussion about some things that we heard from City Council and see where our Planning Commission commission members kind of stand on them. So we've been working through some maps, trying to visually demonstrate what the proposed ordinance text changes would mean. So this is a kind of a multi-layered map, so there's lots of things on here. So if you look at the red, that is our RS1, RS2, RS3, and R&E districts. So those are our traditional residential districts. And if you notice, that means that's where a 500-foot separation would be applicable between a short-term rental. So as you're kind of looking at that, then you see the green areas. That's the commercial districts, the RM1, RM2, and then all those CG, CH, COs, all the way through light manufacturing and so forth. And obviously, they follow our corridors, as you can see. And of course, the industrial area up there in our top right and the industrial area on the bottom right and then those things. So one thing that we are still drilling down to, what is an active STR? Is it, they've got a conditional use, but they haven't done step 2 and 3? Does that mean it's active? So you see there's lots of little dots on there. And those have a 500-foot buffer around them right now. Now, some of those dots look a little odd because as you try to draw in the actual property lines for those, it looks like that it might cross over somebody else's bubble, but that's not really the case because there's that's 500 feet maybe crossing over, where it's really, are they 500 feet apart? So if you look at some of those bubbles that are very close, you think, oh, well, why are those already close together? Well, and Austin might help me explain this a little bit better because he's the map wizard, so he might help me explain that a little bit. So that's where those red dots come into play. And you see that real large one down here? That is one that we approved on South Concho. I think it's 3030 South Concho. But the property is very large, so it looks like, wow, that's a huge one. But it's just an RS1 property. It's just very big. And then the blue dots are schools, our public and private schools, elementary, secondary. That was a list that was provided to us and a layer that was within our map, so that was pretty easy to come into. Now, one of the challenges, and of course this doesn't really zoom in, is you see some of those blue areas are within the commercial area. And so our brains were telling us commercial area, no 500-foot buffer. But we believe it's the city council's intent that if there is a school, there's an implied 500-foot buffer around it, no matter what the zoning district is. And so that's really my question for you guys. Do you feel the same for schools, no matter the zoning location? Do you agree that those should have a 500-foot buffer around them? Whether it's RS1, general commercial, whatever. Schools are 500-foot buffer to have a short-term rental distance away from that school, public or private, elementary, secondary.
So the definition of a school would be children attending school? This isn't gonna be like a bus depot on Bill Street?
No, all of these are actual schools that have students in attendance. They could be TLCA, they could be the Christian schools, as you can see down there off of 277 and 87 to the south of town, right down here. That was on our layer, and so we wanted to make sure we represented all of those schools that we are aware of.
But it does not include ASU.
Okay.
Correct.
We put a buffer on the age gap, right?
Yeah, it's really elementary through secondary. But
Correct.
not college.
Right.
I didn't think about it, but like Lee Junior High right on Sherwood Way, that's
It is.
prime commercial.
Yes.
Yeah.
To the
So that
middle
is
of
an
it.
issue I hadn't thought about.
I mean, I think when we put the buffer, and I'm hopefully not speaking for everyone, but when we put the buffer with the residential and the schools, a lot of it was who's staying at the residence. But at the same point in time, in a commercial setting, you can't control who's visiting the business or who owns the business. So I don't know if the commercial needs that, but.
And traditionally, those areas wouldn't have a short-term rental. It
Right.
would have to be something that you could actually have a short-term rental in.
Yeah, I mean, it's really the area that I would see the most would be, downtown, Chadburn with some loft-style potential, but, I mean, and so then you've got the middle school, so.
Yeah, you have Ambleside that's on
yeah.
Main, and then you have the freshman campus. And then, of course,
Magdalene.
on Magdalene. Now, maybe those are 500 feet away from the Chadburn corridor. That's one of our goals, is trying to break this map up to get some zoom ins to say, all right, how does this really impact?
The school may be, but the practice field may not be,
Right.
so then again,
Right. And so I think the intent is to exclude that practice field where the student's going to be at primarily. Now, not that they're not on the practice field, but Yeah, so that's one of our challenges that we realized when we started doing some mapping. What does this really look like? And so
So
my,
is your question to us?
how do you feel about a buffer around schools in commercial?
And really it addresses council, the original one you sent to council, if, correct me if I'm wrong, did not include schools at all. There was no buffer around them at all, was there?
Could be within a 500 foot of a building, I think.
I think it
It
was.
is.
the-
Did it say
yeah.
in the building?
But it
then
said
we-
public.
Right, and it said public, they expanded it to more schools.
Okay.
We just didn't realize there was as many schools. Our minds automatically thought, well, those are neighborhood schools, not these other schools. But the reality is we have a significant number of schools that are also in commercial districts. Should we look at them the same way as we are in our neighborhood districts?
So, as it applies to schools in general,
Yeah.
how do you want to handle it?
I mean, and I'm just,
I don't know how you could
let's say
exclude
Lee,
one school and not
Lee Middle
another.
School. Could they build an apartment complex or a hotel right by Lee Middle School?
Right.
You know? No, you don't think about that because it's all businesses already set up, but there's some across the road that have closed down that could be tore down pretty easy for that. And that's a short-term rental that is close to a school.
A commercial scale, short-term rental. Yep.
And I mean, that's why we kind of excluded out of the commercial area because that's commercial area was what we thought. You know, you can build a hotel in the commercial area, but.
So I guess we could clarify that single-family properties within 500 feet of schools, not
Commercial.
less than, more than 500 feet.
So the RS 1, 2, and 3, and the R and E.
Yeah, I think that's where we got with all of our discussions, was that
Yeah.
this is really meant to apply to single-family residential zonings.
Yes.
1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
So, and you've broadened this to include public and private schools.
Yes, the ones that we are aware of that are on the list that we have, yes.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, Aaron, have we, talked to Abilene or Midland or Brownwood or anyone else that's doing short-term rentals to see what their guidelines were?
We have not been able to find anybody that does a distance,
Oh, okay.
That does
All
what?
right.
that does a distance from a short-term rental. Most of the state is moving towards allowing them. Now, some of that comes back to some of the court cases but again, our local jurisdiction, this is what we were going to bring forward to city council and let them make the decision.
Some cities have banned them altogether, correct?
Yes, there's none of them that still have that ban. They've been overturned by courts.
Yeah, good.
But I think, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like it should be RS1, 2, and 3. And R&E. I don't think that we need to include commercial personally.
So
And then on the
commercial allows it by right still, regardless.
On the private schools, are they permanent addresses? I know that some of the schools have, they've shifted locations, so would those also be included? I know, I think the one on Chadburn just recently reopened that one.
Yeah, Ambleside that moved over to the Main Street, I think 207 North Main. We would have to go with the time of when the ordinance is adopted, and here's the addresses that we have. If they chose to move and say maybe they moved into an RS area, we would have to figure that out. And if there's one, say there's a short-term rental already there, I believe it would have the grandfathering, but we couldn't allow a new one to come in maybe behind it that's within 500 feet. Because I think that's a challenge we'll run across potentially if a school moves into one of those areas.
Are there any other aspects of the short-term rental ordinance that the city council has raised concerns about?
So I'm going to go to number 3, and then I'm going to come back to number 2. So number 3, they did ask about daycares and childcares. We simply can't get a solid list that's not changing weekly or monthly because it's not tracked by the city.
Really difficult.
It's very, very difficult. Staff's recommendation is that we would not do that, and that's kind of where our stance will be with city council, but we're also asking you guys, what do you think about childcares? Yeah.
It is.
We've given you guys a pretty big feat to begin with.
You can open a childcare business in a house.
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
yes,
There is some of those.
there are. So let's move on to number 2. One of the things that, as we were thinking through, one of our challenges is, particularly in commercial areas, if we're saying they're allowed by right, that's been part of our problem, is that they don't come to us to let us know that, hey, we're operating, and then we really don't know. And if we do have some exclusion zones, for whatever the reasons be, we are just wanting to make sure that we're all in agreement that we think they should come to the city and register. That doesn't mean a conditional use, but register. And if they need a conditional use, okay, here's your conditional use process. If you don't need a conditional use, here's your permit process and your finance process.
Well, because they've got to still be paying the hot tax, right?
Correct. And so we've kind of identified that's kind of how they fall through the cracks. If they do come to us and we tell them, okay, you don't have anything to do, but we may mean just for planning. But in reality, there's a couple of other steps there. And so
So is
we're
there-
trying to make the language to where that if they need to just come to us and register, so we have them on record, we know who their operator is, we know who their owner is. So if we create this website in the future, if here's information, if you have issues, here's how you, as a community, make complaints.
Yes.
We think that's important.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, because again, they need to be paying the applicable taxes, so.
Okay.
Oh, hey.
Get one of those back there. That means get out. Wrap it up. Wrap it up. So that is all that I have for that. So we think.
The only other thing
Go
they
ahead.
did mention, they did talk about deed restrictions. Brandon may want to talk about that, but staff is saying that that's really not something we can deal with. So they
Yeah.
did bring that up as a topic.
I mean, Brandon's probably you can go way more into detail on this, but in my opinion, which is not a legal opinion, but that's not within our purview. I mean, that's a completely separate issue that moves with the ownership of the real estate, not the planning commission.
Yeah, yeah. Generally, we have no ability to enforce deed restrictions anyways. We certainly don't want to be put in a position where you're interpreting whether the deed restrictions mean, can they have a SDR, can they not? Because that would, of course, be subject to judicial review. So I would, strongly suggest staying away from that altogether.
Okay.
All right, so I think we have our direction. Our goal is to have a discussion item on February 6th at the city council to address these ideas and to have some mapping to really show them what some of that means. Our request then will be to have a joint meeting on February the 20th with Planning Commission and City Council.
Okay.
And that's everything I have for the director's report.
We appreciate it. We know that's a lot of work for y'all.
Follow-up and administrative issues. Announcements and consideration of future agenda items. Is there anything you guys want to add or? All right, adjournment.
One thing real quick, I did want to make sure you guys were
Yes.
aware that the next planning commission meeting is on the 26th, not the 19th. It would normally be on the 19th, but that's a holiday for city staff. So PC is on the 26th in February.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
And the only thing I can promise is it'll be shorter than this one.
You
Famous
say that.
last words,
But that's
buddy.
a-
Famous last words. All right. Anyone want to make a motion?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 6-0 at 12:10.